32. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 24th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Immigration backlash. Voters in Germany have turfed out pro-migration Chancellor Olaf Scholz as his party crashes to third place. Is this a warning sign for Britain?
Yes, and Sir Keir Starmer, well, he seems to think so, as he sets his crosshairs on the Reform Party, accusing Nigel Farage of fawning over Putin and promoting dangerous right-wing politics.
Meanwhile, President Macron is meeting President Trump today after he stole a march on Sir Keir, becoming the first European leader to visit the White House. It comes as the Prime Minister says Trump has changed the conversation on Ukraine.
What exactly does that mean? And closer to home, 2 police officers turn up at the door of a grandmother in Stockport, seemingly simply for criticising Labour politicians on Facebook. What does this say about the state of free speech in Britain?
Keir Starmer said his number one political, allegorical leader, the person that he most wanted to emulate in the world, was Olaf Scholz. When Keir Starmer was leader of the opposition, he flew out to Germany on multiple occasions saying, this is how you do it.
Yep.
This is how you run a country. It seems that yesterday the German people disagreed.
Yeah. He schmoozed the wrong guy in Germany, didn't he? And considering how much he wants to be in a great relationship with everyone EU, it was probably the wrong man to be schmoozing.
Yeah,
Now what does he do? I mean, Olaf Scholz is almost irrelevant, probably, going forward. He's certainly going to lose his job.
Yeah, I mean, third place, going from first to third place. I mean, it is quite extraordinary that, it's as if the Labour Party came in third, which I suppose is something that Keir Starmer is deeply worried about, given the state of the polls at the moment, and his new attack on Reform UK is Is Keir Starmer worried that you saw a Conservative Party and a further right-wing party come first and second in Germany? I mean, is it possible that if trends continue, something like that could happen in Britain too?
But also, as with so many leaders, they've been in denial about the strength of feeling over immigration. Now, in Germany, yes, the economy has also been doing pretty dreadfully, but be in no doubt that this was about immigration first and foremost, and unfortunately the swathes of attacks that have been and taken place in Germany that have been perpetrated by failed asylum seekers or asylum seekers, recent refugees. And the German people are thinking, well, hang on, it was the socialists or the social democrats that let in all these people.
Yeah.
Another option.
Although it was also Merkel, who, of course, was for a long time in coalition with the Social Democrats, with her CDU party. But it looks like the outcome of this could be yet another coalition, just with the other people swapped around the other way.
Yes, they're going to try and freeze out the Alternative for Deutschland, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But what do you think of it all? And do you think that something similar might happen in other countries? Could it happen here at home? Well, gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved. All to come after your latest headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's just after 12 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To mark the grim milestone, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke at the event on a virtual link from Downing Street, saying the UK is with you today and every day.
Their voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine.
The Vatican says Pope Francis remains in hospital, where he's also experienced mild kidney problems, but continues to be alert and well-orientated. Pope Francis has asked for prayers as he continues to receive treatment in hospital for double pneumonia. The Vatican also says 88-year-old spent a tranquil night in hospital last night in Rome. Germany's Conservative Christian Democrat Party have won the country's election. Friedrich Merz party finished well ahead of rival parties, but short of the 30% vote share they had expected. The other winner of the night was the Alternative for Germany party, who are celebrating a record second-place result of just over 20%. The CDU leader now begins the arduous task of forming a new coalition government. Nigel Farage has hit out at Sir Keir Starmer after the PM accused the Reform UK leader of perpetuating dangerous policies. In a major speech at the Labour conference in Glasgow, the PM condemned what he's calling the dangerous right-wing politics of reform.
A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland, that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain.
A British couple in their 70s have been arrested by the Taliban in Afghanistan. 79-year-old Peter Reynolds and his wife Barbie, who's 75, were returning to their home in the east of the country on the 1st of February when they were detained. The couple have been running training programs in Afghanistan for 18 years. It's currently not known exactly what the couple were arrested for. Conclave has emerged as the film to beat at next week's Academy Awards after sweeping the Screen Actors Guild's awards overnight, winning Best Film and Best Ensemble. Other winners included Demi Moore, Timothée Chalamet and Kieran Culkin, who are now heading into next week's Oscars with a boost in momentum. And finally, the Flying Scotsman has made its first passenger journey of the year as it hauls carriers over the Nain Valley Railway in Cambridgeshire as part of a celebration of 200 years of British railways. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 12. Welcome along to the, our leading story of today, migration backlash, a tidal wave in Germany as voters turf out the governing left-wing coalition. Chancellor Olaf Scholz, a close ally of Sir Keir Starmer, of course, collapsing his party from first to third place.
Yes, in first and second place are now two parties that pledged to clamp down on immigration, the Christian Democrats and the more radical Alternative for Deutschland.
Yes, well, anticipating the result yesterday, perhaps, Keir Starmer chose to launch a broadside against the Reform Party, claiming their right-wing politics are dangerous.
So, does he now fear that, like in Germany, the governing left-wing party could fall from first place to third?
Well, should we get a bit more information about what exactly took place in Germany and what it means with German journalist Elisabeth Dampier? Elisabeth, thank you very much indeed for your time. What did we see? Was this a mass rejection of high levels of immigration in Germany?
Morning. Yes, we saw that basically the people have voted for a right-wing government, essentially. And it is also a rejection of the current immigration policy. But what we're going to see in Germany is probably the formation of another grand coalition, which means CDU and SPD, which means essentially maybe a little reform on those topics.
It is interesting, given the complete collapse in the authority, really, of the SPD, the sort of governing Social Democrat Party, that they're going to end up in government anyway, but albeit as the junior partner. I mean, what does this say about where the German people are at? Because the guy that's now going to be the new chancellor, he's a very different sort of politician to the sort of Merkel kind of CDU conservatism that we saw for 15 years in Germany. This guy's definitely to her right.
Yes, that's correct. Merz is definitely to Merkel's right. But on the other hand, he will struggle to pass the legislation with the SPD. And this is where he will be literally against the wall in many cases. They don't agree on energy policy. They don't agree on migration. They don't agree on the economy broadly. So how will we be governed in the future?
Yeah, and 20-odd% of people voted for the Alternative for Deutschland, the more radical anti-migration party in Germany. Can the mainstream parties continue to freeze them out?
Yes, they can, because this is an essential flaw of our German democratic system, because the parties themselves can select with whom they govern, which is why we'll get again a centre left-wing government, despite the people voting clearly for a right-wing, centre right-wing government. Yeah.
It is interesting, though, that people will have voted for the CDU in the knowledge that they said absolutely no coalition, no dealing, no working with the AfD. So is it fair to say that people actually voted in large numbers for a right-wing coalition when the parties were clear about their red lines before the election?
That is true. However, I think a lot of people were hoping that the CDU might be convinced, especially since the AfD is now moving more into a mainstream position, that they in the end might, after a lot of coalition talks, might, even if it's a small chance, some people I think were still hoping that there might be a black and blue coalition.
Yes, because a lot of people aren't going to be happy if there's just minor tweaks to policies, and that's all they get from this complete change in the way people voted. But Elisabeth, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Elisabeth Dampier, their German journalist, on what happened overnight in Germany. And it is a complete shift, isn't it? A complete rejection of the status quo in Germany.
Absolutely. Should we get a bit more on what it might mean for us in the United Kingdom now? Could the elections in Germany be a warning sign even for Sir Keir Starmer, who chose yesterday to launch a broadside against the Reform Party, claiming their right-wing politics is dangerous?
Yeah, so let's discuss this further with political commentator Benedict Spence. Benedict, thank you very much indeed. We're just speaking about the German election, but interested to know what this means in Britain, because it does look as though Keir Starmer was anticipating this result, perhaps, in Germany with that speech against reform. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think that the average British voter necessarily pays too much attention to what goes on in Germany. I think that those who do probably have already made up their mind which way they are going to vote. But I do think that what has happened in Germany is a sort of a portent of what could well come here. In many ways, Britain is slightly behind the curve in that it's had its sort of general election and kicked out the Conservatives, you know, the nominally called Conservatives, just at the cusp of all the other countries sort of voting en masse for more right-wing parties. Now, as to whether or not we'll actually see right-wing politics in Germany, what we would consider to be particularly right-wing politics in Germany, is another matter. You know, it's very much, I think, been a country that, much like Britain, has sort of done the thing of promising very conservative things and not actually delivering on them. But I think it's a sign of how, frankly, how tired the playbook is in the UK, that Keir Starmer is just doing what he and regularly Labour leaders have done in the past, and The Guardian has sort of parroted as well, which has gone, oh, be careful now, the right wing is on the march in Europe and they're very dangerous, and oh, look, our economy has tanked, and oh, look, our services are falling apart, but you absolutely can't vote for the right wing people because things will somehow get worse. It doesn't really work unless, of course, you can put forward a vision and policies of your own that are going to alleviate this. So far, it has perhaps been the worst 6 months or so of any new government, perhaps in British history, certainly modern history, in terms of their inability to get their feet under the desk and actually get these things going again. The economy is worse. Social services are worse. All kinds of services are worse. Nobody feels particularly better off. And the difficult thing with reform is it's very hard to place what exactly they are. They're very anti-migration, although they sort of dip and dither on what exactly that means. They're very anti-high taxes, although, of course, it's very difficult to pin down what exactly that means. Their key is that they are not Labour and not the Conservatives. And so that actually makes it very hard to take pot shots at them, other than to just go, oh, be careful, them dangerous right-wingers, eh? You don't want to let them in.
I think this every single Wednesday when we sit down, we watch Prime Minister's Questions, watch it on this channel, of course, and we see Kemi Badenoch stand there, throw a broadside at Keir Starmer, and it's usually a very legitimate criticism of something that's going wrong in the government. And then Keir Starmer says, well, it was also going wrong when your lot were in government. Yeah. And they just fly these sort of munitions over to one another, shell each side until no one's left standing, apart from one guy at the back who's avoided all of the artillery. And he's called Nigel.
Yeah. The difficulty with Kemi Badenoch is I don't think she was ever going to be the solution for the Conservatives. However, I do think she had to be leader in order to dispel the notion that she could ever be effective to many of the party's top brass and many of the membership. I also think that the person who was most likely to be able to take on reform, Robert Jenrick, was not a credible candidate at the last leadership contest. He didn't have a big enough profile, and he had only very recently had his Damascene conversion from being a Cameroon. He required a longer period of time in which to set out his stall. So in many ways, this might work quite well for the Conservatives because it means that they're going to get to see Kemi Badenoch in action, front row and centre, not being very good for a year or two, and then they will be forced to come to terms with the fact that if you want to beat reform as the Conservatives, there's only one way of doing it, and that is eating into reformers' policies such as they are and doing it better. For Labour, their biggest hope right now, apart from, I don't know, governing competently, might just be that the Conservatives and reform take chunks out of each other and allow them to sneak in with a very slim majority at the next general election. And that's the playbook right now. That's really desperate.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms, if you put your head in, I don't know, try and get into the mindset of Keir Starmer. Now, he's obviously been very buddy-buddy with Olaf Scholz. I think he picked the wrong man to schmooze. What would his interpretation of what we've seen in Germany be? Do you think he'll accept that it was a backlash, a legitimate backlash against immigration, or will he say the same thing as he's saying about reform, that it's dangerous right-wing politics and what we need is more, you know, left-wing progressivism to solve it?
I think the difficulty with the results in Germany is they're not large enough for the AfD for people to say, the tide has definitely shifted. It's only a small increase from their last set of results. And the problem is, if you look at sort of all of the cohorts, it's actually
Didn't they double from the last general election?
No, it's up from 15. And I'm talking about the European election. Sorry, not the last
fine.
election. But no, you're right. It's doubled in that period of time, and that's not bad. But given the state of Germany, that's also perhaps smaller than you might have expected. I thought the same thing about Reform actually at the last general election. They did very well given where they'd come from, but given the depth of ill feeling, perhaps they should have done slightly better. The difficulty is if you look at how different demographics have voted in terms of age, the AfD seems to do very well amongst almost all cohorts until you get to the older population who have very staunchly sort of centered with the Christian Democrats and not voted AfD or Die Linke either, which I think what that will be taken as is a sign that there is still time, so to speak, to head off right-wing parties. There's still time, as long as that cohort, frankly, stays alive and stays voting, you can just about keep them out for the time being. And I suspect Starmer will be thinking something similar. I don't think it's true. I think you can win those voters over, but I think that's probably the line that he will be taking.
And Benedict, you mentioned Die Linke there. This is not, of course, the centre-left party. These are, in effect, the communists in the parliament. I mean, really, they have been accused of being, you know, in the pocket of Putin as well. I mean, all the different things. They are the sort of very, very radical left-wing party. But interestingly, looking at young voters, looking at 18 to 24-year-olds, 18 to 24-year-old boys, men, voted overwhelmingly for the AfD. 18 to 24-year-old girls or women voted overwhelmingly for Der Link. I mean, even more so than the boys who voted for Alternative. So I suppose the question here is, I mean, we've seen endless think pieces about how radicalised young men are becoming. Do we need to start talking about the radicalisation of young women?
Well, here we have it in Germany. One set of people are voting for the nationalists and one set are voting for the socialists. I'm sure that'll work out absolutely fine. Germany historically has always done very well.
You're not referring to 1933, are you, Benedict?
Surely not, no. That would be very cheap, a very cheap shot. But I think it is a sign that people are just fed up with what is considered the mainstream, and perhaps it is considered more politically tolerable or acceptable in some circles for people to vote more extreme right or left. I also think it's very interesting the way that the left, the former East Germany, rather, voted sort of very staunchly for the AfD, whereas elsewhere it was absolutely the opposite of the case. I think there's still a cultural hangover in Germany from the post-Second World War and Cold War era that perhaps just isn't going to be reflected in the UK. I think you're right, though, to point out that it's not just young men that are being pushed to the extremes. We're often told, aren't we, that all the evils of society are because young men are being radicalized. But a simple look at how things are going in Germany and also in other European countries suggests it's young people in general. You can't just ignore that and blame it on young, white, working-class boys forever.
And why would you blame young people when their life chances are so much worse than they were, even 20 years ago? I mean, the economy in Germany has been in recession for the best part of the last 2 years. Energy costs have been through the roof.
Let's not write off their futures yet. Let's not write off their futures. Benedict Spence, thank you very much indeed, political commentator. Great to have you on this one. I wonder what people at home... I do think that girls are becoming more radical, yes, in some ways, just in the other direction. You've got a lot of boys who are going towards the sort of, what would you call it, ethno-nationalism and this sort of thing, and then girls going more and more progressive, if you want to call it that, going more woke, going more left.
In some ways, it's identity politics on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, the really far-right identitarian movement of, blood and soil nationalism and all that ghastly stuff.
And that appeals to some young boys, doesn't it?
I mean, really, really awful stuff. But, I mean, isn't that just the same sort of thing as the colour of your skin is what matters most, which often is the very far-left position as well as the very far-right position?
Yeah, and Dawn's got in touch, says Keir Starmer intends to copy the European policy to ban coalitions with the right by painting reform as dangerous and so on. Yeah, I guess that's interesting. You don't know who's going to be holding the cards come the next general election in this country. No. Could be that you have three parties who receive a similar amount of votes.
But also, I think it is wrong to say that the Reform Party is in the same category as the AfD. I mean, the AfD they come from a very, very different tradition than Reform do in the UK. Actually, a lot of these European sort of hard right, some people describe them as far right parties, come from a very, very different tradition historically. I mean, the Brothers of Italy party, very, very different. Obviously, the National Front in France, or now National Rally as they're known, very different tradition that comes from sort of the more questionable histories of some of these countries.
Oh, yeah, Reform UK is very different, and Nigel Farage would say so, I'm sure. But yes, our poll of the day is the general election more proof of a backlash against mass migration? I think you've had your say, but please do add your tick or cross to that one, your yes or no on gbnews.com/poll.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, we're going to be live in Kiev. Keir Starmer says President Trump has changed the global conversation on Ukraine, and Boris Johnson says that we may be very, very close indeed to a deal between the United States and Ukraine on their minerals. Could this provide peace? Don't go anywhere.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As we kick off 2025, many of us might be thinking about a bit of a wardrobe refresh, especially if you're over 50 and you feel like the high street doesn't quite cater to you.
Indeed. That's where our next guest, Mel Tillett, comes in. She's in the studio with us now.
Mel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. That you are this accidental influencer. I love that you said that's the first time.
Yeah, it is. That's the first time I've heard it.
You can have that
yes,
for free on
thank
GB.
you so much. It's quite true.
Tell us about your following. Obviously, an influencer that many people might typically think of would be someone in their teens, someone in their 20s, someone who's particularly social media savvy, using TikTok. Talk to us about your brand of influencer.
Well, our influencer, my kind of influence is over the older age group, the over 50s. For my business, I do a lot of live videos. I do them early in the morning at 7:30, which sounds ridiculous, but I know my ladies are up and about at that time having a cup of coffee or whatever that might be. And just being honest about day-to-day life. So my dogs are running about, my grandchildren are even sometimes in them, one thing and another. So it's just been purely by accident that I've got this really nice, loyal following, and I get lovely messages off ladies. I'll do things like, I'll tell them when I'm going for a mammogram, and I'll say, come on, everybody go for your mammogram.
That's brilliant.
All sort of health-conscious things. I've been a lot heavier than I am now, and I've slimmed down and lost some weight. I've been talking about that journey as well. And then ladies will ask me questions on the videos, and we chat about all sorts of different things. And now I'm getting messages every day, and people are loving the clothing ranges that we do. And it's just, I started off as a business, that's purely what I did, but it's turned out into this other... I get recognised places I go now, which is really weird.
It must be of huge benefit to your business as well.
We employ around about 50 people.
Wow.
And I'm quite open to my audience and saying, you know, while you keep buying offers, while you're loving our products and our clothing, you're keeping 50 people in jobs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past midday, and we're going to go straight to Kiev now and join the Ukrainian Member of Parliament, Alexei Goncharenko, because this, of course, is the 3rd anniversary of the Ukrainian war. And Alexei, a lot of talk today about a potential deal between the United States and Ukraine on minerals for peace. What can you tell us about it?
Hi, a lot of talks, but we don't know the text. We haven't seen the text yet. And so it's hard for me to comment. Will it be signed soon or not? And in general, our attitude is next. We are happy to have our partners. And first of all, the United States of America is our single country partner to work together with Ukraine and to produce minerals in our country and to earn money here. That's absolutely fantastic. But it can't be like a bill for some unknown sum. Because when it said $500 billion, Ukraine never received support from the United States on such sum. So that's very important what will be in the deal.
And what's your perception been of everything that's happened over the last few days, with Donald Trump leading talks with Vladimir Putin, with Europe, with Ukraine, with Zelensky accusing Donald Trump of freezing him out of these talks? Do you believe that Ukraine has been given enough of a voice in all of this? I think we might have lost Alexei there, which is a shame. But interesting. It's very interesting as we find more details about this minerals deal, what exactly it will entail and whether it's something that Ukraine could sign up for.
Well, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been speaking earlier today, and in his view, the US and Ukraine are very close to signing an agreement. And he was saying sort of the various texts that are floating around. There isn't one official text. Obviously, there's a lot of fraught negotiation going on. But the kind of text that the former Prime Minister was talking about earlier today alluded to the US accepting and Ukraine. Sovereign Ukraine, really important there, because a sovereign country is one that can enter into any agreement that it wants to enter into. A sovereign Ukraine could enter into an agreement, for example, with minerals for peace deal, I suppose, which, I mean, it's a tough bill, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it could actually deliver a peace that might be acceptable, especially with that sovereignty issue within Ukraine.
And if the United States has financial interests in the Ukraine, presumably that would mean that then the United States will want even more than ever to secure the peace in that area and for years to come, because otherwise they'll be losing out.
I think that to some extent, some voices in Ukraine even if a liberal Western European country, in a sense, that it's preventing to governments what it wants. Perhaps
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham, the A167 is closed in both directions at Newton Aycliffe after an accident. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down at junction 26 at Chain Barn. It's sloped towards there. On Merseyside, Hornby Road's closed each way between Southport Road in Bootle and the A59 Rice Lane in Liverpool for an investigation. In Norfolk, the A47 is partly blocked eastbound just after the Saddlebow roundabout at Kings Lynn, causing delays. In Monmouthshire, the A4042 is closed each way off the A40 south of Abergavenny because of flooding. In London, the A2 is closed in both directions along Shooters Hill Road in Blackheath after an accident with delays on the westbound side towards the closure. And in East Sussex, the A259 is closed each way along Grand Junction Road off the A23 Palace Pier roundabout in Brighton because of an unsafe building causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apologies for the technical issues there. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily. Will be right with you just after your latest news headlines with me, Lewis Mackenzie. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To mark the grim milestone, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke at the event on a virtual link from Downing Street, saying the UK is with you today and every day.
Voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine, to the community.
The Vatican says Pope Francis remains in hospital, where he's also experienced mild kidney problems, but continues to be alert and well-orientated. Pope Francis has asked for prayers as he continues to receive treatment in the hospital for double pneumonia. The Vatican also says the 88-year-old spent a tranquil night in hospital in Rome. Germany's Conservative Christian Democrat Party have won the country's election. Friedrich Merz's party finished well ahead of rival parties, but short of the 30% vote share they had expected. The other winner of the night was the Alternative for Germany party, who are celebrating a record second-place result with just over 20%. The CDU leader now begins the arduous task of forming a new coalition government. A British couple in their 70s has been arrested by the Taliban in Afghanistan. 79-year-old Peter Reynolds and his wife, Barbie, who's 75, were returning to their home in the east of the country on the 1st of February when they were detained. The couple have been running training programs in Afghanistan for 18 years. It's currently not known exactly what the couple were arrested for. Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
OK, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's 12:36. Sorry for those minor technical issues, but we are back. And in the last few minutes, we can bring you some breaking news. Yes, the former Labour MP, Mike Amesbury, has now been sentenced to 10 weeks in prison after admitting to assaulting a man.
This is a serious sentencing, and it could lead, of course, to a by-election, the first of this Parliament. Let's cross straight to Downing Street. Speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, for more details. Christopher, this is a very, very serious conviction.
It really is. Hi Tom, hi Emily from Downing Street. Now this news broke in the past 5 minutes, so we haven't got a response yet from Sir Keir Starmer. Of course, Mike Amesbury is no longer a Labour MP. He was suspended by the party back in October 2024 last year when CCTV pictures emerged of him punching a man in Cheshire. "You won't threaten the MP ever again, will you?" is what he said. Now, he pled guilty to charges on the 16th of January this year, and he's now been sentenced today to 10 weeks in prison. Now, he might appeal. We don't know if he's appealing this yet, but if it's not appealed, this will trigger a recall petition and could force a by-election in this seat. Now, it's a seat which the party held with a majority of around 20,000 last time Labour, but it's certainly a seat which I'm pretty sure Reform UK have been selecting candidate and are active in the seat. So this could be the first big test of Sir Keir Starmer, Labour, of their young administration. A big moment in politics here.
Certainly. We know that the Reform Party have been working the seat ever since this incident took place. People were suspecting that there could be a by-election, but we now know with this custodial sentence being handed down, this does meet one of the conditions whereby a recall petition can be brought by the constituents of Runcorn and Helsby. Of course, this could be some time until there is a by-election, but if that recall petition that is surely now going to get underway is successful, this could be the first real electoral test in terms of a parliamentary seat for the Labour Party since the general election.
It will. It's worth just reminding viewers that if he appeals and if this 10-week time in jail is given in, say, community service or something different, then there won't be a recall petition. So it's worth noting that for viewers and listeners that he could appeal this and it could all change. It has in the past with Claudia Webber in the last Parliament. She was convicted of harassment, and then that was reduced to community service on appeal. So if that were to happen, he could carry on sitting as an independent MP, not as a Labour MP, but there'd be no requirement for a recall petition. So we're on the road towards what could be a by-election in this seat, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and Christopher, just casting my mind back to when this footage emerged, it was all caught on CCTV. It was very dramatic. You saw Mike Amesbury, now sentenced to jail, punching a man, here we go, punching a man while he was already on the floor. Very violent, very aggressive, appeared to be quite late at night near a pub as well. I think you could call it a bit of a late-night brawl, really. It's not what the public expect of those who are meant to represent them.
No, absolutely. I mean, Amesbury, Mike has, to be fair, pled guilty to that punch. He's a former Labour member since he was 17 years old. He's a son of a carpet fitter and a dinner lady, 55 years old, councillor for Labour Council since 2006, and he was an MP since 2017. The seat then in Weaver Vale was wound up and changed in 2024. A very experienced politician. His career now lies in disgrace. Even if he comes back from this and gets this jail term appealed successfully, his career politically is in a sense over, although he can remain as an independent MP. I should say that in the briefing just now with the lobby, with the PM's official spokesman, it's all about Ukraine. So according to Number 10, they believe that Donald Trump's interventions in recent days on Ukraine has changed for the better the prospects for peace. He has brought about these talks, we're told by Downing Street. We all want to see a lasting peace, and they support Trump's efforts to bring it about. And don't forget, this time, a week ago or five days ago, there's remarks by Donald Trump and by JD Vance were causing chaos in the international firmament. Now the UK, it looks like,
can we spell this out
getting behind Trump.
Black and white? Because what you're saying here is that the Prime Minister's official spokesman has said that Donald Trump's comments in recent days have improved the prospects for peace. So Donald Trump's comments calling President Zelensky a dictator, saying that Ukraine is responsible for its own invasion, all of these things, Downing Street is almost apparently endorsing. I know they wouldn't agree with those terms, but they're saying that these extraordinary statements from the President of the United States have been good for peace.
Well, they won't do it as directly as you're saying there, Tom. We were saying in the meeting, well, you know, he said Zelensky was a dictator. Is that helpful? No, it's not. And in fact, Number 10 has made clear when the PM rang Zelensky last week and told him, you know, you're a democratically elected leader, and in fact, elections were postponed in this country during the Second World War. So it's understandable, and that's one of the issues that Trump has. Why do you delay these elections? That makes him a dictator. Well, clearly, Number 10 doesn't agree with that at all. But what they're saying is the intervention by Trump has created a space to end the killing, and that's what they're supporting. Now, later today, President Macron from France, he's meeting with Donald Trump in the White House, a press conference later today. The UK says they're working closely with France, so it's clear that we have got on the same page with France. Issues, though, like a European defence force, the government says that it's focused on NATO as a way to ensure peace in Europe, not a European defence force. No new date for getting to 2.5% of GDP spent on defence, and they welcome Boris Johnson, who's been out in Ukraine trying to support the UK government. They welcome that. They say that anyone who supports Ukraine, they will support that effort, and our support as a country for Ukraine is ironclad.
Just very quickly, Christopher, I hope you don't mind me asking about this, but how much trouble is the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, in over his claim to be a solicitor, and then people finding out that actually he was never a solicitor, he was only a trainee and never fully qualified? Because I understand that the Solicitors Watchdog has reopened an investigation. I mean, it is a very serious accusation, this, and so far he seems to have gotten away with it. But are we any more clued up on what the consequences might be for him?
No, we're not. And he's a trainee solicitor. He said that before he's an MP. He was a solicitor in Manchester. He said the same to Parliament. He said that was a misspeak. He blamed the remarks when he said he was a solicitor on members of his team, on third parties. Wasn't him. But now it's more troublesome, I think, for him is that since the end of last week, the regulatory authority for that profession are saying that since more information has come to light, they're reopening an investigation into whether it is a big issue. If you say you're a solicitor and you aren't one, that's a big issue. Now, it looks like he's done it on LinkedIn profiles. Once in Parliament, he said sorry for that. So as things stand, it's OK, but I would be worried about that, I think. Certainly he'll be worrying about that. And you can't say you're a solicitor when you aren't one. That is totally not allowed. OK, well, Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed for being there outside Number 10 for us. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. That one can't be dropped on Business Secretary. You can't say you're a solicitor and present yourself as a solicitor on multiple occasions when actually you never qualified. If that is the case.
Yeah.
I mean, saying you misspoke, I mean, is that OK? Is that where we are?
It's a bit rum to blame your staff on things that come out of your mouth, really. I mean, like, sometimes you're reading things, you can always see what is there before you. You can change it in your own head if you don't like what's written there for you.
But there's accusations that he used this very much when he was, you know, pitching to become an MP, you know?
Although...
Pitching for his position. I've been a solicitor.
I would have been more sympathetic because, of course, he was a trainee solicitor. And in the same way that, you know, if you're a junior doctor, if you're a trainee, if you're sort of working in the same office, doing the same job, until, of course, the Industry Association come out and say just how serious this is. That has sort of changed the dial on that one. Because up until now, I was sort of thinking, oh, OK, I mean, if he's doing the work of a solicitor, if he was acting as a solicitor but he hadn't fully qualified, or he was, you know, 5 minutes from crossing that line, is it really that big a deal? But given that the Industry Association is now flagging this as an issue,
I think it is very serious, because I think a lot of people start the training process and don't complete it because it's very difficult.
Right.
And in this case, a bit of a misrepresentation there from our business secretary, which is quite an important position. But anyway, I'll bring you any updates on that and everything else. But if you are in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, welcome to your winter sun forecast. Sunshine and showers for many with snow over the Alps and feeling less cold in Greece. Plenty of sunshine across the Canary Islands, feeling pleasant here, highs of 19 degrees. There'll be sunshine and showers elsewhere, falling as snow over the Alps, and across Greece, temperatures are going to be rising with temperatures up to 13 or 14 degrees. Looking ahead then, plenty of sunny spells, a few showers still around and feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After quite a wet start across parts of the south and southeast, rain eventually clearing, leaving a day of sunshine and showers, but still very blustery across parts of the northwest. A risk of gales here, where we see most of the isobars on the chart. Rain eventually clearing the far southeast, leading to a day of sunny spells and showers, but some of these showers quite heavy at times, merging together to bring longer spells of rain. May even see some hail and thunder mixed in there too, and very blustery showers across the far northwest. A risk of coastal gales here, but for many, a finer day compared to Sunday. Plenty of dry weather and plenty of sunshine too, and temperatures still widely above average, highs of 13 to 14 Celsius across the far southeast. Then to end the day across Scotland, still plenty of very blustery showers, particularly in western parts, perhaps a little bit drier across the far east, but even here can't rule out still a few showers moving their way through, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of England, still some very heavy showers moving through here, similar across Wales and parts of the southwest, but central and southeastern parts may see a slightly drier end to the day with light winds. Then through the course of the night, we'll continue to see these showers slowly skirting their way eastwards across the country. Blustery still to start across northwestern parts of Scotland, but those winds eventually easing away by morning. And we may even see some longer spells of rain across southern counties at times too. But once again, plenty of dry weather overnight, and most towns and cities just remaining above freezing. Then as we head into Tuesday, once again a fairly similar day, a drier start across parts of the southeast, even seeing some sunshine later, but we still can't rule out plenty of showers moving their way in, particularly across the far northwest, and then eventually seeing a few more bubble up elsewhere through the course of the afternoon. But much lighter winds than of late. Once again, still plenty of dry weather around and temperatures still above average for the time of year. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 minutes to 1, and a grandmother in Greater Manchester was visited by police officers. Why? She criticised Labour politicians on Facebook.
Yep, her detectives questioned the 54-year-old Helen Jones about her calls for the resignation of local councillors involved in a WhatsApp scandal. Then she received the visit from Greater Manchester Police within 2 days of the force receiving a complaint about her posts.
Good to see they have their priorities in order. Dear. Well, although officers concluded that Helen had committed no crime, she says she was intimidated into being silent online and would not post again.
And that's the point, isn't it? Just by virtue of the police turning up at your door, you're going to censor yourself. Editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, joins us now. Tom, this is a shocking story. I mean, we've seen a number of these incidents where the police rock up at people's doors, seemingly out of the blue, because of something they've posted on Facebook or Twitter.
No, it's absolutely outrageous, especially when you think about what she was visited by the police for posting. She was criticising her local Labour councillor. She was criticising the Labour Party. She was criticising the Labour Party. She was criticising her local Labour councillor. And she was criticising her local Labour councillor. And she was criticising the Labour Party. She was criticising her local Labour councillor. And 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 she was criticising her local Labour councillor. a gentleman by the name of David Sedgwick. She was angered by his involvement in the WhatsApp off-collar joke scandal, which claimed Andrew Gwynn, the health minister's job, a couple of weeks ago. So we're in a situation in which you can be visited by the police because you've criticised your own elected representatives on the internet. We really are in quite dangerous territory. It's worth saying that the police's deflection here is that they had already come to the conclusion that no further action was necessary, but they needed to notify her of the complaint. That just doesn't wash as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, you'd be in a situation where any kind of vexatious complaints could lead to a knock at the door. But you've already made the point there, Emily. It's purely by visiting people for what they posted on the internet, you do create that chilling effect, which is why we should take cases like this so seriously.
I mean, it is pretty extraordinary. I mean, is this something that has been happening more and more? Is this the law, or is this more murky and sort of political pressure? Powerful people talking to their mates in the police to not go and rough up, but to go and intimidate people from criticising political figures?
No, it's really hard to tell, but I think what we have seen from other examples is that the police often feel under pressure to be seen to be dealing with certain types of incidents more forcefully because of who the complainant is. That could be because they're a local politician. It could also be because the complaint is being made by activists who is claiming some kind of harm. The police don't want to be seen to be not listening to, say, someone who's involved in the gender debate because they're supposedly being bombarded with abuse. There's all kinds of unfortunate political considerations which come in when the police have so much purview to police or online speech. So even in a situation in which no crime has clearly been committed, their sheer involvement becomes more politicised, brings the police more into disrepute and chills free speech across the board in the way that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if it was one of these Labour councillors or Labour activists reporting this, then that is absolutely disgraceful. Tom Slater, thank you very much, editor of Spite Online. I mean, Keir Starmer talking about all dangerous policies of Reform UK. Perhaps he should look a little closer to home.
Yeah, I've got a theory that they go for these because they're easy.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
They didn't turn up at the violent criminals' doors because that might put them at risk.
I mean, how many stories do all of us have about pathetic police responses?
We should say the Manchester Police have released a statement. They say we spoke to the woman for 6 minutes to advise she was the subject of a complaint of harassment and to answer any questions she may have. No further action is necessary as no crime has been committed.
Oh, good. OK, we're under a duty to inform her that she is the subject of a complaint. Genuine threats that have been made to local councillors recently have meant it is more necessary to ensure a report. So let's OK, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We will take a very quick look at the weather first.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through this evening and into tomorrow, still plenty of scattered heavy showers, maybe even some hail and thunder possible, and still rather windy across the far northwest, where we see most of the isobars on the chart, though overnight we'll eventually see these winds easing away, leaving to a largely dry night across eastern areas, but still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into the west. Still, once again, they could be heavy overnight, but it should be largely dry across the very far southeast, and where we start to see winds ease away across the north, perhaps even some patchy frost by the time we reach the morning. Most towns and cities, however, remaining largely above freezing, lows of around 3 to 4 Celsius. Then to start the day across Scotland on Tuesday, once again quite a wet start across parts of the west. Plenty of blustery showers once again moving their way through here. Perhaps a little bit dry across parts of the east. Aberdeenshire, for example, could see a brighter start to the morning. Northern Ireland, plenty of showers moving through here too, also across the northwest of England. But elsewhere, it should be largely dry to start, though there could be some longer spells of rain across parts of Sussex and Kent. Then through the course of the day, once again, we'll see a fairly similar day, much drier across parts of the southeast and dry for many away from the northwest, where once again, still plenty of showers skirting through here. And then through the course of the afternoon, we will start to see some showers bubbling up across parts of England and Wales too. But on the whole, there should once again be plenty of dry weather around, plenty of sunshine too, and a slight dip in temperatures, but still above average for the time of year, highs of around 10 to 11 Celsius. Heading into the evening, a dry nightfall, but still some showers moving into the far northwest. And eventually we'll start to see some longer spells of rain move their way into Northern Ireland through the early hours of the morning. And by the end of the week, we should see more drier weather on its way, but turning chilly overnight and likely starting to see some frost. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, you're 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 24th of February. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, the former Labour MP Mike Amesbury, he's been jailed for 10 weeks at Chester Magistrates Court after he admitted to punching a man in the street in Cheshire last October. We'll bring you the latest.
Elsewhere, immigration backlash. Yes, voters in Germany have turfed out the pro-migration Chancellor Olaf Scholz as his party crashes to 3rd place. Is this a sign of what could come in Britain?
Well, does Sir Keir Starmer seem to think so, because he's set his crosshairs on the Reform Party, accusing Nigel Farage of fawning over Putin and promoting dangerous right-wing politics.
Meanwhile, President Macron is meeting President Trump today after he stole a march on Starmer, becoming the first European leader to visit the White House, this new White House. It comes as the Prime Minister says Trump has changed the conversation on Ukraine. Why do our MPs keep punching everyone?
I mean, behaving like absolute hooligans.
You'd think, you're in a privileged position. You're representing. You're one of 650 individuals elected across the country to represent your constituents. Last time I checked, representing constituents doesn't account for punching them.
Bill says 10 weeks for giving someone a slap is quite severe. It was more than a slap. I mean, we all saw the CCTV footage. He punched him and then continued to punch him when he was on the ground, by the looks of
It was
things.
violent, it was thuggish, it was everything that politics shouldn't be. It's everything that our society's evolved out of. I mean, we do politics, we do debate in the House of Commons so that people, don't fight each other. We used to settle political disagreements with sort of armies and weapons. Now we have words. It would be quite nice to stick to the words.
You've never lowered yourself to a bit of fisticuffs, have you, Tom?
No, because I'd lose.
That's probably why, yeah. Well, AM says Amesbury, he'll probably only serve 40% of his sentence before he's released. You might be right on that. It seems as though, from the judge's remarks, that he wanted to make an example of Mike Amesbury, because it is pretty outrageous that an MP, a serving politician, would find the time to punch someone to the floor on a night out. I mean, seriously, no thought to your position and the responsibility you have. I know we have fights all the time on our streets, unfortunately, and, it is sometimes people do get into fights.
But casting this as a fight, I mean, watching that footage, the man was just standing there and suddenly there was a massive sock to his face and he collapsed on the floor. I mean, that wasn't provoked, or at least it wasn't provoked with violence. It might have been provoked with words, but, I mean, there's no legitimate response to
weren't there rumours that
violence to words?
This guy had been talking to him about the winter fuel payment and things like that, and this was... Tina says, I can stomach one punch, but he punched him 7 times. What would Joe Public receive for that? And there's still a chance he could remain an MP. Come on now.
Of course, it's not the first Labour MP to have punched someone. If we think back to the coalition government, Eric Joyce punched a bunch of Conservatives on the terrace of the House of Commons. That led to the selection in Falkirk, which was his constituency, and the sort of shady dealings and unions sort of trying to get in their candidate for that meant Ed Miliband changed the electoral system for the leadership of the Labour Party, which had introduced the £3 members, led to Jeremy Corbyn. That is a chain of events. That's a domino that is an interesting sort of quirk of history.
I mean, who are we electing in this country? gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch, but it's the headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just after 1 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. As you've just been hearing, former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been jailed for 10 weeks after he admitted punching a man to the ground in his Cheshire constituency last October. Amesbury, who represents Runcorn and Holsby, pleaded guilty to assaulting 45-year-old Paul Fellows, and after a video footage showed emerging him in the confrontation. We'll, of course, bring you more as we have it. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To mark the grim milestone, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke at the event on a virtual link from Downing Street, saying the UK is with you today and every day.
Their voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine.
The Vatican says Pope Francis remains in hospital, where he's also experienced mild kidney problems, but continues to be alert and well-orientated. Pope Francis has asked for prayers as he continues to receive treatment in hospital for double pneumonia. The Vatican also says the 88-year-old spent a tranquil night in hospital in Rome. Germany's Conservative Christian Democrat Party have won the country's election. Friedrich Merz's party finished well ahead of rival parties, but short of the 30% vote share they had expected. The other winner of the night was the Alternative for Germany party, who are celebrating a record second-place result with just over 20%. The CDU leader now begins the arduous task of forming a new coalition government. Nigel Farage has hit out at Sir Keir Starmer, saying Labour is getting desperate after the PM accused the Reform UK leader of perpetuating what he's calling dangerous right-wing politics. In a major speech at the Labour conference in Glasgow, the PM condemned Reform's dangerous policies and criticised Farage over his party's employment rights and potential NHS charges.
A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland.
that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain.
Conclave has emerged as the film to beat at next week's Academy Awards after sweeping the Screen Actors Guild Awards overnight, winning Best Film and Best Ensemble. Other winners include Demi Moore, Timothée Chalamet and Kieran Culkin, who are now heading into next week's Oscars with a boost of momentum. And finally, the Flying Scotsman has made its first passenger journey of the year as it hauled carriages on the Nain Valley Railway in Cambridgeshire as part of a celebration of 200 years of British railways. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 1, and to the breaking news within the last hour. The former Labour MP, currently an independent MP, having lost the whip, Mike Amesbury has been sentenced to 10 weeks in prison after admitting to punching a constituent.
Yes, he's the MP for Runcorn and Helsby, and he'll serve 40% of his sentence before being released on licence. OK.
Well, let's get straight to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who has all the details on this issue. Christopher, what are the consequences now of this extraordinary sentencing?
Well, we could be looking at the first test of this Labour government in a by-election, because this is why. Because he's been sentenced to some time in prison, if he doesn't reduce that on appeal to a different sentence, Tom and Emily, there will be a recall poll, a referendum in his seat in Runcorn and Helsby. If 10% of the people who can vote support a by-election will be held. Now, this is a seat which was held with a majority of nearly 15,000 over the Reform UK party at the last election by Mike Amesbury. It's a big moment, a big test here. No wonder we've already got a statement in the last few moments from Zia Youssef, who is Reform UK's chairman. He says in terms that today Ainsley has been sentenced to 10 weeks in prison. The great people of Runcorn, he says, deserve far better than waiting 6 weeks for a recall petition to take place. He says, we call on Mike Amesbury to do the honourable thing and resign immediately so a by-election can be held. Reform UK are aware of this. They know it's their big moment in this year. Normally you do have by-elections several a year in the early part of election, almost many as one every 2 months at the back end of a parliament as events happen and people have to have by-elections because of life moving on, etc. So it's the first big test of this government so early in its time, and no wonder Reform UK are pressing for a by-election. But as I say, one cannot be held until the entire appeals process has been exhausted by Mike Amesbury. We wait to see what he wants to do next. He's an independent MP suspended by the Labour Party in October. Of course, CCTV footage shows him punching a man in his Cheshire constituency. You won't threaten the MP ever again, will you? He was heard to say by witnesses. He pled guilty to a single count of Section 39 assault on January the 16th. He's now been sentenced to 10 weeks in prison. Again, we'll wait and see what happens next.
Yes, Christopher, I mean, there will be a lot of pressure on him to do, as you say, what some are calling the honourable thing and just stand down. I mean, surely... I mean, he's put the Labour Party in disrepute, I suppose. It's not a great look for politicians as a whole. It's not something that any of his fellow MPs would want to defend. He probably should just stand down.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, it's indefensible what happened. He was suspended immediately by the Labour Party. He himself is 55 years old. He's been a Labour member since age 17. He's 55 now. His dad was a carpet fitter. His mum was a school dinner lady. He's someone who's lived and breathed the Labour movement, a councillor since 2006, lived and breathed that Labour movement for all of his life. His career is now in tatters. The question now is whether he wants to go with to quit his seat with a degree of pride, it might be, or just walk out with his head held high, or hang on. He could stay on as an independent MP if this sentencing is reduced on appeal to not being a custodial one. We'll wait and see how that plays out. A previous MP in a last government, that happened with them. They were given a community term, which meant they could hang on as an independent MP. Yeah. But I think his time as a Labour politician is certainly over.
Well, really interesting stuff. Christopher Hope, thanks indeed for joining us live there from Downing Street. I have to say, it is frighteningly similar to the case of Eric Joyce, the once Labour MP for Falkirk. He punched a bunch of people on the terrace of the House of Commons in 2012.
Oh dear, oh dear.
But this was before these recall petitions were legislated for. So he actually stayed on as a Member of Parliament from 2012 right up till 2015 as an independent MP. And given we're just at the start of this Parliament, I mean, I can see why there's the sort of temptation to try to exhaust every appeal. Because there's another 4 years of this Parliament to go. There's another 4 years of taxpayer-funded.
You'll struggle to get another job, presumably, after this. Perhaps. Is 10 weeks enough? It's interesting, when you've been in this job for a while, you start to remember judges' names.
Yes.
And this judge is Tan Ikram. And you might remember him, actually. He's the one who was quite controversial when he was accused of just giving a slap on the wrist to those girls who had the paragliders on their backs.
Oh, yes.
So, yes, that's that chap. And various people have pointed to some of his judgments. It's interesting, isn't it? These judges, they come back.
Yeah, although this is a pretty... Eddie, I mean, it's a custodial sentence, which does mean if it is upheld, there could well be that by-election.
40% and out. Anyway, in other news, migration backlash, a tidal wave in Germany as voters turf out the governing left-wing coalition, with Chancellor Olaf Scholz, a close ally of Keir Starmer's, collapsing his party from first to third place.
Yes, in first and second place now are two parties who pledged to clamp down on immigration, the Christian Democrats in first and the radical Alternative for Deutschland party in second.
Yes, anticipating the result yesterday, perhaps, Starmer chose to launch a broadside against the Reform Party, claiming their right-wing politics are dangerous.
Well, does he now fear that, like in Germany, the governing left-wing party could indeed fall from first place to third in a future election?
Well, perhaps. Let's head to Berlin and speak to journalist and host of the Mad in Germany podcast, James Jackson. James, what's your assessment of what we've seen in Germany with this election there? And is this primarily a backlash against immigration?
I think this has definitely been a swing to the right. Migration was one of the top issues in this election, but it's not all about that, because Chancellor Scholz was definitely not giving the leadership that Germany needs during this kind of transformation, both economic, Germany, of course, going from an industrial powerhouse to a bit more of a sluggish economy in the last 6 years, as well as questions of peace. But migration and security was a big issue, there's no doubt about it, because we have had a number of horrific terrorist attacks by people who have in the past applied for asylum in Germany. So there's definitely been part of the story, and the CDU, the Conservative Christian Democrats, and the AfD have both been campaigning anti-migration and controversially even voted together on a resolution which was a big political taboo in Germany that was broken, and which some people are blaming for the CDU getting under 30%, which was their goal.
And yet, the CDU clearly won this election. They came first. It's very likely that Herr Merz will be the next Chancellor. I mean, this is a guy who is much more to the right than previous leaders of the CDU. He was cast out of the party almost by Angela Merkel when she defeated him in the early 2000s. He went off for a career in business. I know there was a lot in the election about him flying around on a private jet. He seemed to be less in the sort of very eco-conscious mould that previous CDU leaders have been. To some extent, are we underplaying just how much the CDU has changed under the leadership of Merz, both on migration policy, defining himself against Merkel's open borders, but also on energy, wanting to bring back nuclear power and all of these things that were abandoned under previous iterations of his party?
You know, I think you've nailed it there, Tom. Really, the big story of the election alongside the AfD, which of course is a bit more dramatic, is that the CDU has become a much more traditionally right-wing party than it was under Merkel. Merkel was more of a centrist figure in a lot of ways. And I will say with Merz, I think it's unfair, the private jet comments, because I've seen pictures and it's very small. It's more like a biplane. So he's quite a goofy character in certain ways, quite sort of grumpy, very German in that sense. But I do think that he's definitely moved this party to the right, and he has been rewarded with being the chancellor, but he was quite significantly short of the 30% goal. And this is still one of the worst results in the CDU's history, despite the fact that they've come top by a significant margin. It's all about the fragmentation of German politics, which is an issue that we see elsewhere as well. We could have, if there had just been ever so slightly more votes for some of the smaller parties, we could have had 7 or even 8 parties in the Bundestag this time. So it means that forming a governing coalition is much trickier under this proportional representation system.
Yeah, I fear that by freezing out the Alternative for Deutschland completely, though, that you are disenfranchising a fifth or so of the voting population. Is that not dangerous?
I mean, arguably, yes, it is dangerous. But I think actually what Merz has always tried to do is effectively, on policy, they're not that far away from the AfD on migration and some other issues. They are more pro-Russia than the CDU, that has to be said. But, if I think Merz's offer to voters was, if you want to clamp down on migration, then you've got the CDU. Some of his close allies said, we are the real alternative for Germany, or the democratic alternative for Germany. So without these sort of semi-fascist figures, which you do get in the AfD, and that's one of the reasons why they're frozen out, as well as some bizarre comments about, Hitler being a communist, or, the Nazis just being a bird speck in 1,000 years of glorious German history. So there are good reasons to keep them out, I believe, especially as, the intelligence services say a lot of them are right-wing extremists.
Well, this is the interesting thing about the AfD, isn't it? I mean, it started off back in 2013 as sort of like an intellectual party that was just fixated on the euro. And then they sort of got infiltrated. The original founders left because it went too fringe and loopy. And a lot of sort of very, very dodgy people got involved. But now it almost seems like there are 2 AfDs. I mean, the leader seems to be on the more moderate wing of it, but then there are all of these stories about these members who are found with swastikas and all the rest of it. I mean, it's a struggle within that party.
Yes, but if a clear vote went to the right wing, then if there is a partnership now with the left, with the CDU leading things, there's not going to be much movement on migration policy, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Germans are going to feel totally as if their vote doesn't count. And I think that is a dangerous state of play.
Well, that all depends on the coalition agreement, because, James, there will now be weeks, if not months, of negotiations on what exactly goes into this coalition agreement.
Exactly. Although one of the first things that Friedrich Merz, the presumptive next chancellor, said is, Europe is waiting for Germany. He hopes for very quick negotiations by Easter. So, in a few months, which to Brits might sound like a long time, but actually that's pretty quick by German standards and European standards more generally.
We're used to holding an election and the morning after you get a new guy in Downing Street. Of course, the Americans wait months, the Europeans always negotiate. I mean, we're basically the outliers here, aren't we? Yeah.
I think so, yeah. But I think, the security issue in terms of Trump and Ukraine has really put the fire under the bellies of the CDU and also probably the SPD, because they know, Germany needs a government if we can't be dealing with a caretaker left-wing Remainder government, if Russia's coming around the corner and America's backing away. So I think they will have to negotiate on migration with the SPD, but I think negotiations go both ways.
Yeah. OK, well, James Jackson, host of the Mad in Germany podcast, despite sounding very sensible on this programme today, thanks indeed for joining us.
OK, well, we are giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway today. We have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's the details you need.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more coming up on today's programme. Indeed, is the Reform Party dangerous? Or is the Prime Minister simply threatened by their politics? Of course, all following what Starmer said yesterday, turning those crosshairs very much towards Nigel Farage. We're going to have that debate very, very shortly. Indeed, next. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1 now. The Prime Minister attacked Reform UK yesterday, accusing the party of dangerous right-wing politics.
It was rather an odd speech, wasn't it? In Glasgow at the Labour conference, he talked about all sorts of things, but very much decided to take the attack to Reform. But did he manage it? This comes as Reform UK's popularity has soared as the party overtakes Labour in the polls.
So, is the Reform Party dangerous, or is the Prime Minister simply threatened by that party's rise, or a bit of both? both.
A bit of both, maybe.
Well, we're joined now by the Reform UK mayoral candidate Dame Andrea Jenkins and the Labour Party activist Chris Worrell. Right, Chris, Keir Starmer made the claim yesterday that reform is dangerous. Is it really?
I mean, Tom, Nigel's quick to sit down with Bannon and rant about the globalist elite, but when Bannon's sea Kyling like it's 1939, he's quieter than a pub with no beer. I mean, this is Steve Bannon, the Steve Bannon, who called for the beheading of Fauci and an FBI director, or put their heads on pikes back in 2020, subsequently banned from YouTube. I mean, if that's not dangerous, I don't know what is.
OK, well, Dame Andrea Jenkins, Nigel Farage hangs out with some wrong-uns.
Look, they was at a conference, the same conference, and come on, you know, look what Starmer was saying about Trump, how he was dangerous in previous elections, and now he's going to meet him this week. So it's very hypocritical, that. And I think it's a bit rich also from a party. I mean, what is dangerous? Look, Miliband is planning to desecrate our countryside with these massive solar farms. They're punishing our pensioners, they're fleecing our farmers, they're attacking parents who want to use their hard-earned cash to send their children to private school. They're attacking free speech by arresting people for their social media posts while letting out paedophiles and rapists. And I could go on and on. I mean, look at the way Rachel Reeves handling the economy. So I can go on and on. So I think danger is actually this current government.
Over to you, Chris.
I mean, Ben Jenkins speaks about hypocrisy there. We've got Derek Wilson, who's just been approved as a reform candidate, who's no less than 3 times talked about assassinating the Prime Minister. And Dame Jenkins herself has defended Joshua Spencer, who was convicted, by the way, you know, talking about violent uprisings and revolutions in February 2020.
Can I come in on that point?
Let me finish my point. You know,
hang on, Chris, just let Andrea, because you made a specific accusation. So Andrea, come back and then we'll be back to you.
Right, you're saying about this this young lad who he was in his early 20s. He was a conservative activist. His father killed himself. He had severe mental health problems. So all I did was give a reference to the court about how I found him and say, can you take into consideration his mental health problems? That's all I said. That's not defending someone's actions. So I completely disagree, and I want that on record.
Okay, back to you, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Jenkins, but when you talk about Axel Rubicano, who wasn't the NHS healthcare plans, you know, you call for capital punishment. And at the end of the day, we've got approved
what's wrong with that?
Reform. Well, I mean, you wouldn't call for capital punishment for your Joshua Spencer, who wanted to pay £100 for crackheads to beat up Yvette Cooper, who had to do 9 weeks in the nick. So don't talk about hypocrisy. At the end of the day, reform's economic nationalism is a disaster. We're seeing how that's playing out with Trump in the US. They've got the biggest stock market crash in ages, consumer confidence on the floor since 1995. And I think they've got long-term inflation aspects that are just spiraling out of control. The cutthroat capitalism of reform.
So do you think Labour's doing a good job, by the way? Do you think they're doing a good job? Do you agree with what they did with the pensioners, etc.?
I mean, the winter cruise allowance there, Dame Jenkins, I'm not surprised you're defending that. I mean, we're seeing Robin Hood.
Winter cruise allowance.
That's literally what you're defending, Dame Jenkins. You know, we've got Robin Hood in reverse with the populist nationalism, where they're going to be nicking from the poor to give to the rich. And we're seeing, you know, we don't want the cuddly capitalism of the EU. The Labour Party is putting out Securonomics, which is based in creating innovation and entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And we've seen that with...
OK, Chris. Andrea, Securonomics with Labour, dangerous economic nationalism with Reform.
I just think he's speaking out of his bottom, so to speak, I'm afraid. Look, you seem a nice guy, but you're just not making sense to me. I mean, look at the Employment Rights Bill, what Labour's planning to do. It shows that the unions are in charge of the Labour Party and the Labour government. They're going to desecrate business. I mean, what they're doing with this net zero, it's gone to the nth degree now, and they're actually planning 37,000 acres of solar farms in the heart of the breadbasket of England, who feeds Britain, doing this in Lincolnshire. Look how not only punishing businesses, but look how some Labour councillors. You're even affecting free speech. So if there's any danger, it's with Labour in every area of society.
Chris?
Well, I mean, unless they're sort of paying £100 for crackheads to beat them up, maybe there might be some issue there. But talking about the employment, you know, the workers' rights, I mean, unfair dismissal, you know, strengthening protections around that, maternity protections, you know, statutory sick pay from day one. Those sound like what working people want, in my opinion, Tom and Emily, and that's what Labour are offering.
What if it costs jobs, though,
but they're trying to do away with the probationary period and where it's not 3 days statutory sick pay now. You can get paid from day one. How is that going to help the economy, which is already tanking? It's not.
Well, the economy's not tanking. We're seeing some of the biggest, you know, expectations for turnover in 2025. We've got growth at the heart of this agenda. What does that mean? You know, creating an environment. We're seeing the sort of better regulation coming from planning reform, new housing.
Growth. Why are lots of businesses not wanting to invest, and why are millionaires leaving Britain?
Millionaires leaving Britain because we're seeing at the end of the day some sort of grab from, you know, the sort of richest in the world that want to flee. They don't want to sort of innovate and invest here, but they will be doing.
We've kind of turned to a debate on is Labour dangerous now, but we did start off with reform, and you both put your points across. Thank you very much indeed. Chris Worrell, you are, of course, a Labour activist, and Andrea Jenkins, Dame Andrea Jenkins, mayoral candidate for reform. There you go.
Oh, they're both good fun. They're both good fun, aren't they?
I like the, not zero and all the fun terms being thrown around there.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure you'll have your own views. gbnews.com/your say. Looking forward to reading some of those
that was a bit more of
on.
Is reform or Labour more dangerous? But hey, there you go.
Kemi Badenoch got off that scot-free, didn't she? But there's much more coming up on today's programme. Indeed, our top story. The former Labour Member of Parliament, Mike Amesbury, has been jailed for 10 weeks at Chester Magistrates Court after he admitted punching a man in the street. But has he got off lightly? Well, that's after your headlines with Lewis.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's just after 1:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie in the GB newsroom. As you've just been hearing, former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been jailed for 10 weeks after he admitted punching a man to the ground in his Cheshire constituency last October. Amesbury, who represents Runcorn and Helsby, pleaded guilty to assaulting 45-year-old Paul Fellows after video footage emerged showing the confrontation. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To mark this grim milestone, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke at the event on a virtual link from Downing Street, saying the UK is with you today and every day.
Their voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine.
Now onto a developing story. French police confirmed 3 projectiles were thrown at the perimeter wall of the Russian consulate in Marseille, and 2 of them exploded. The incendiary devices were thrown into the gardens of the consulate. Investigators are analysing the contents of the 3 soda bottles that were used as projectiles. The Kremlin are now pressing France over security measures following the incident, which Moscow says appears to be an act of terrorism. Germany's Conservative Christian Democrat Party have won the country's election. Friedrich Merz's party finished well ahead of rival parties, but short of the 30% vote share they had expected. The other winner of the night was the Alternative for Germany party, who are celebrating a record second-place result with just over 20%. The CDU leader now begins the arduous task of forming a new coalition government. The Vatican says Pope Francis remains in hospital, where he's also experienced mild kidney problems, but continues to be alert and well-oriented. Pope Francis has asked for prayers as he continues to receive treatment in hospital for double pneumonia. The Vatican also says the 88-year-old spent a tranquil night in hospital. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. Let's have a look at your finances.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's market. The pound will buy you $1.2638 and $1.2072 euros. The price of gold is £2,330.45 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,657 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Kilwinning and Ayr because of electrical supply problems. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down at junction 26 at Chain Bar. On Merseyside, Hornby Road's closed each way between Bootle and Liverpool for an investigation. In Lincolnshire, the A52 is closed along Trustthorpe Road at Sutton-on-Sea because of a burst water main. In Gloucestershire, the A48 is closed each way at Chaxhill at Westbury on 7, causing delays. In Monmouthshire, the A4042 is closed off the A40 south of Abergavenny because of flooding. In London, the A206 is closed along Plumstead Road in Woolwich because of an accident. And in East Sussex, the A259 is closed in both directions along Grand Junction Road off the A23 Palace Pier roundabout in Brighton because of an unsafe building causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
That's football.
Well,
you know, it's the hope that kills you.
It does. It gives you highs, it gives you lows. I mean, if you're an Everton fan at the moment, you probably had far too many lows. But as you know, I'm a Nottingham Forest fan.
Well, you must be having a huge high.
But, you know, you had one of the greatest footballers ever to grace the game, Mike, and that was Dixie Dean.
Yeah, absolutely. William Ralph Dean. Didn't like being called Dixie, but that was his nickname. And he was born in 1907. He was my grandfather's best mate. I'm an Everton shareholder. I've been, you know, attached to the club all my life, and so was my father, so was my grandfather, our greatest ever player.
So back in the day when players like Dixie Dean were playing football for big crowds in, you know, a proper...
72,000.
Yeah, a proper working class sport back in the day, weren't it, football? Not like it is today. You've got to be pretty wealthy to afford a ticket.
Even in the 70s, right, and I've seen some, you know, I do like looking back on the football that I watched as a kid. Even in the 70s now, I've seen pictures of the turnstiles, as we used to call them, with a sign at the top, 5 shillings for the Eastern Terrace. 5 shillings. Yeah. Last time I turned down a ticket to go to a football match was Arsenal, who wanted me to pay £830 for a seat in an executive lounge. And though I could have afforded it, because I've worked all my life like you, I just thought at that point, that's ridiculous.
Well, you should have told him you were Keir Starmer's security man. You'd have probably got him for nothing.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But you know, you go back to the the 1930s and 1940s, even the 1960s and 70s. You know, the footballers would walk to the ground and play a game, and then walk back and go for a few beers in the pub.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 20 to 2. Now our lead story. The Labour MP, the former Labour MP, I should say, he has been suspended from the party. Well, now he's also potentially been suspended from his liberty. Yes, he's been sentenced to 10 weeks in prison. This is Mike Amesbury, sentenced after admitting to punching a constituent.
Yes, the 55-year-old, he was caught on camera, CCTV, assaulting Paul Fellows and shouting, "You won't threaten the MP ever again, will you?"
Well, given the scenes, rather shocking scenes, we're asking, is this sentence too lenient?
Well, we're joined now by former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. Peter, what do you think? Do you think 10 weeks is enough?
This sentence is woefully inadequate. So many of us have seen the video, the level of violence that Amesbury used against this man, the amount of times that he punched him. And any experienced murder detective will have told you about cases that they worked on where one punch can kill someone. This doesn't reflect the seriousness of the situation. And most importantly, it doesn't act as a deterrent to villains in these increasingly violent streets that are now plaguing the UK.
Well, this is the thing. This man is supposed to represent us, at least his constituents. He has a huge responsibility, or had a huge responsibility in Parliament, representing the views, protecting the public, putting forward legislation even, Peter. So you think 10 weeks, how far would you go for this then?
Oh, I would be looking at a couple of years as an absolute minimum. And I would like to live in a world whereby the sentence you receive is the sentence that you serve. In all likelihood, he'll serve a fraction of 10 weeks, probably, ironically, being let out under an early release scheme brought about by what was his government. We need deterrence. Violence is breaking out on the streets of Britain in every town, village, hamlet and city at a frightening rate. It's simply not good enough to weigh somebody off with a pathetically, woefully inadequate sentence like this, because it will not deter anyone.
And yet we do need that sort of deterrence. You're absolutely right. I wonder if what the judge was doing here was trying to provide the maximum sentence that could not be appealed. Because, of course, if Mike Amesbury appeals this sentence and it is reduced to something like community service, then there's not going to be a recall petition. There's not a possibility of a by-election. Whereas with any custodial sentence at all, there is that recall petition. There will likely be that by-election. I mean, isn't that going to be the most severe punishment of all, losing his job?
In many ways, you've hit the nail on the head with regards to your comments about the judge. The Sentencing Council hands down guidelines to judges and magistrates, and what judges do not like is having their names and their reputations trashed in a higher appeal court when any sentence that they handed down then gets reduced and they get criticised. So I'm sure this judge did look at the sentencing guidelines and handed down, as you quite correctly, I think, have alluded to, a sentence that he feels could not be successfully appealed.
And that's quite interesting, actually, because this particular judge has been criticised before for some of his decisions, fairly or unfairly. Particularly one of the most controversial was the women with paragliders who were at a pro-Palestine protest. He was criticised for that one. But, Peter, where do we go from here? I mean, 10 weeks for this MP. Assault is taking place up and down the country. Is it common for people to be given such short sentences or to be let off completely for these types of crimes?
Sentences just so rarely actually fit the crime these days, unfortunately, largely due to the prison overcrowding system. If I had the rest of your show, I could explain to you at length my vision, but I'll give it to you very briefly. Scrap all sentences under 4 years. Make sure that there are very, very harsh and punitive community sentences which improve people and rehabilitate them in their communities. Minimum sentence, 4 years. First year, comply. Second year, apply for courses and vocational training. Third and fourth years, get yourself some qualifications, come back out onto the streets, ready to fit into society, obey the law and contribute.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of sense there. These short sentences can often just be a training ground for people who go in, meet more hardened criminals, get into that spiral of a life of crime. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Mike Amesbury. Perhaps for people like Mike Amesbury, who I'm fairly sure this is a first offence, I mean, this could be one of the justified short sentences, i.e. a quick, cold sort of moment of self-reflection, the idea that someone's been to prison, that social stigma. I mean, that as a sort of a quick sort of jab, a quick hit to make sure he doesn't behave like that again. Is that a justifiable form of short sentence for a first offender who's previously not been in trouble?
I don't buy into the wake-up call with regards to this man who was an elected member of Parliament. Elected to serve his constituents, to set an example, to make the law, not break the law.
Yeah, Peter Blexley, thank you very much indeed. I quite like your plan on how to improve things when it comes to sentencing. Former Metropolitan Police Detective, of course, Peter there, dialing in. Well, can't disagree with much of that. No,
I do think generally short sentences, especially when people are just in and out of prison, you know, they're in prison, they're released, they burgle something, beat someone up, commit a crime, they're back in for another 6 months, then out, then in. I mean, it's a conveyor belt.
Sounds like Peter would have them do some hard graft or something like that, you know, to make up what they've lost to the community. Anyway, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, welcome to your winter sun forecast. Sunshine and showers for many with snow over the Alps and feeling less cold in Greece. Plenty of sunshine across the Canary Islands, feeling pleasant here, highs of 19 degrees. There'll be sunshine and showers elsewhere, falling as snow over the Alps and across Greece. Temperatures are going to be rising with temperatures up to 13 or 14 degrees. Looking ahead then, plenty of sunny spells, a few showers are still around and feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Do stay with us. Plenty more to come. Indeed, Ed Miliband, the Secretary of State for DESNZ, Department of Energy, Security and Net Zero, well, he insists he will not change course on a Labour manifesto commitment to ban fracking for good, despite the discovery of a prodigiously large gas field in Britain. More on that next.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After quite a wet start across parts of the south and southeast, rain eventually clearing, leaving a day of sunshine and showers, but still very blustery across parts of the northwest. A risk of gales here, where we see most of the isobars on the chart. Rain eventually clearing the far southeast, leading to a day of sunny spells and showers, but some of these showers quite heavy at times, merging together to bring longer spells of rain. May even see some hail and thunder mixed in there too, and very blustery showers across the far northwest. A risk of coastal gales here, but for many, a finer day compared to Sunday. Plenty of dry weather and plenty of sunshine too, and temperatures still widely above average, highs of 13 to 14 Celsius across the far southeast. Then to end the day across Scotland, still plenty of very blustery showers, particularly in western parts, perhaps a little bit drier across the far east, but even here can't rule out still a few showers moving their way through, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of England, still some very heavy showers moving through here, similar across Wales and parts of the southwest, but central and southeastern parts may see a slightly drier end to the day with light winds. Then through the course of the night, we'll continue to see these showers slowly skirting their way eastwards across the country. Blustery still to start across northwestern parts of Scotland, but those winds eventually easing away by morning. And we may even see some longer spells of rain across southern counties at times too. But once again, plenty of dry weather overnight, and most towns and cities just remaining above freezing. Then as we head into Tuesday, once again a fairly similar day, a drier start across parts of the southeast, even seeing some sunshine later, but we still can't rule out plenty of showers moving their way, and particularly across the far northwest, and then eventually seeing a few more bubble up elsewhere through the course of the afternoon. But much lighter winds than of late. Once again, still plenty of dry weather around and temperatures still above average for the time of year. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, it's now 1:50 in the afternoon, and Ed Miliband, yes, he's pledged a permanent ban on fracking just days after the discovery of a giant gas field in Britain.
Yes, the Energy Secretary indicated he would not change course on Labour's manifesto commitment to ban fracking for good, despite the discovery of that Lincolnshire gas field. And today we learn it's not just being banned, we're concreting up the existing gas wells we have.
Why are we doing this? Well, let's talk to the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy. Donica, I mean, we're shooting ourselves in the foot here, aren't we?
Good afternoon, Emily, Tom. Well, I think it's good news that Ed Miliband is continuing the Tory policy that was instigated after the earthquakes happened at the Quadrilla sites. This is what's happening today. Ed Miliband has given the go-ahead to the final stage in implementing the Tory policy of closing down those disastrous wells that caused earthquakes. Remember, when Quadrilla started drilling in Lancashire, they said that they would accept a 0.5 Richter scale as a limit to the earthquakes. What actually happened was a 2.9 rate, which is 31 times larger in impact. So we need to move away from fossil fuels. We need to move on to renewable energy, which is cheaper. And the thing to remember about fracking, no matter how much gas they produce, it will be sold on the European market.
Donica, can we just be clear? Because obviously the Richter scale, it's a confusing scale because it's logarithmic. Which means that obviously the difference between a 5 and a 6 is huge, but the difference between a 1 and a 2 is almost minimal. I mean, a 2.9 magnitude earthquake cannot generally be felt by human beings.
It's like going like this with a big book.
The key thing about
you have to register it with a seismograph because you can't you can't feel it as a human being. I mean, this is what we're talking about.
All earthquakes are measured by seismographs, Tom, and the fact is the government and Quadrilla agreed the limit, and the limit was 0.5.
Which is ridiculous.
Well, they agreed it, and it is agreed because...
I mean, if any construction site has greater seismic activity than 0.5 on the Richter scale. I mean, come on.
It's not 0.5, it was 2.9 was the earthquake.
Which also isn't felt by human beings.
And actually, anyway, the issue of fossil fuels, why would we invest in new fossil fuels when the International Energy Agency says we've already got twice as much fossil fuels in train that can actually trash our climate? We need to be moving on to cheaper green energy, not going backwards to the energy of the last century. What we need to do if we want to bring down prices for homeowners is we need to get rid of standing charges on home electricity. We need to get rid of the Tory tax on green electricity, and for God's sake, we need to not implement the Farage-Deform proposal to put an anti-green tax onto pensioners' electricity bills as well. Utter nonsense.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I would also agree with you had energy bills gone down since all this net zero stuff. And they haven't, it doesn't seem.
But I agree. Yeah. I agree. But you know why, Emily? That's really crucial. Why? Because the price of electricity in the UK is linked to the marginal cost. And the marginal cost is linked to fossil fuels, gas. And because gas is going through the roof, our electricity prices are not coming down. Even the Daily Mail and I agree on this.
Yes. No, I think that would be a useful reform, but obviously we also need to include the cost of backup in the cost of renewables because that's all the infrastructure that's needed. I'm so sorry, we've only got a few seconds until the end of the hour. Donica McCarthy, we will have you back. We do enjoy having you here. Thanks for joining us. Up next, more Mike Ainsbury. Will there be a by-election? Stay with us.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through this evening and into tomorrow, still plenty of scattered heavy showers, maybe even some hail and thunder possible, and still rather windy across the far northwest, where we see most of the isobars on the chart, though overnight we'll eventually see these winds easing away, leaving to a largely dry night across eastern areas, but still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into the west. Still, once again, they could be heavy overnight, but it should be largely dry across the very far southeast, and where we start to see winds ease away across the north, perhaps even some patchy frost by the time we reach the morning. Most towns and cities, however, remaining largely above freezing, lows of around 3 to 4 Celsius. Then to start the day across Scotland on Tuesday, once again quite a wet start across parts of the west. Plenty of blustery showers once again moving their way through here. Perhaps a little bit dry across parts of the east. Aberdeenshire, for example, could see a brighter start to the morning. Northern Ireland, plenty of showers moving through here too, also across the northwest of England. But elsewhere, it should be largely dry to start, though there could be some longer spells of rain across parts of Sussex and Kent. Then through the course of the day, once again, we'll see a fairly similar day, much drier across parts of the southeast and dry for many away from the northwest, where once again, still plenty of showers skirting through here. And then through the course of the afternoon, we will start to see some showers bubbling up across parts of England and Wales too. But on the whole, there should once again be plenty of dry weather around, plenty of sunshine too, and a slight dip in temperatures, but still above average for the time of year, highs of around 10 to 11 Celsius. Heading into the evening, a dry night for all, but still some showers moving into the far northwest, and eventually we'll start to see some longer spells of rain move their way into Northern Ireland through the early hours of the morning. And by the end of the week, we should see more drier weather on its way, but turning chilly overnight and likely starting to see some frost. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsor of weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British Giveaway. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16 and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 24th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been jailed for 10 weeks at Chester Magistrates Court. This after he admitted punching a man in the street in Cheshire last October. We'll have all the very latest.
We will indeed. And immigration backlash. Voters in Germany, they've turfed out pro-migration Chancellor Olaf Scholz as his party crashes to 3rd place. Is this a warning sign of things to come for Britain?
Well, Sir Keir Starmer seems to think so. Yesterday, he set his crosshairs on the Reform Party, accusing Farage of fawning over Putin and promoting dangerous right-wing politics.
Yes, and meanwhile, Macron is meeting Trump today after he stole a march on Keir Starmer, becoming the first European leader to visit the White House. It comes as the Prime Minister says Donald Trump has changed the global conversation on Ukraine. You getting in touch. We spoke to Peter Blexley. We all know Peter Blexley. He's on the channel a lot, the former Met detective. And he said that this 10 weeks for Mike Amesbury is just simply not enough. It should be at least 2 years, he said.
Yeah.
Some of you seem to agree. Frank says the judge has already said the violent ex-Labour MP will serve only 40% of his 10-week sentence. So his early release is already built in. Yeah, I mean, why don't sentences mean sentences? I'll never understand this.
I think it's an incentive structure for good behaviour, but it does seem silly because when the public hear that someone has been sentenced to X number of years, let alone X number of weeks, they expect that that means this dangerous individual will be locked away for that time. To me, prison, I mean, to some people, prison is about punishment. To others, it's about rehabilitation. To me, primarily, it's neither. It's about keeping bad and dangerous people away from the rest of society. I mean, I don't care if they're punished or not, frankly. I mean, I'd quite like them to be punished, but that's a secondary order issue for me. For me, like, the number one thing is that these people are kept separate, hopefully with very, very high walls and barbed wire, kept away from the rest of society.
Yeah, I must agree, actually, with that. But some of you saying, well, hang on, incitement to violence sometimes gets more in prison than actual violence that we all saw on CCTV. I do think we have a problem in this country with, you know, there are a lot of people who think that there is, you know, a two-tier justice or that the police aren't pursuing crimes as they should do. They're going after easy crimes like turning up at that, well, not even a crime, I mean, they have admitted it wasn't a crime, but turning up at that grandmother's house because some Labour politicians may or may not have complained about a Facebook post. I mean, bizarre what some of the priorities are for the police.
It does seem that way, although, of course, in every case, there are so many nuances. Unless you're there in court, you might miss one or two things. I mean, with Mike Amesbury, no doubt this will be a shorter sentence due to the fact that he's never been in trouble with the law before. That is always something that is massively considered. However, it's probably more than someone else who beats someone up in a pub would get. Probably the normal sentence for that, for someone that hasn't ever been in trouble with the law before, would be community service, probably. But there is the other consideration that this person is in a position of authority and influence. I mean, there's so many different factors in all of these cases.
Yeah, they need to make an example out of him. But Mick just says, Peter's talking rubbish. As a former police officer, a lot of people sentenced to community service would refuse it and rather do a few weeks or months inside. Would they get the choice, Mick? Would they get the choice to refuse community service and go, you know what, I spent a few weeks in the clanger?
Yeah,
I don't know. Do they get that choice?
Or would or should. But many more of your views are very, very welcome, of course. gbnews.com/your sale to come after your latest headlines with Lewis Mackenzie.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's just after 2 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. As you've just been hearing, former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been jailed for 10 weeks after he admitted to punching a man to the ground in his Cheshire constituency last October. Amesbury, who represents Runcorn and Helsby, pleaded guilty to assaulting 45-year-old Paul Fellows after video footage emerged online showing the confrontation. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To mark the grim milestone, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke at the event on a virtual link from Downing Street, saying the UK is with you today and every day.
Their voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine.
The Vatican says Pope Francis remains in hospital, where he's also experienced mild kidney problems, but continues to be alert and well-oriented. Pope Francis has asked for prayers as he continues to receive treatment in hospital for double pneumonia. The Vatican also says the 88-year-old spent a tranquil night in hospital in Rome. Germany's Conservative Christian Democrat Party have won the country's election. Friedrich Merz's party finished well ahead of the rival parties, but short of the 30% vote share they had expected. The other winner of the night was the Alternative for Germany party, who are celebrating a record second-place result with just over 20%. The CDU leader now begins the arduous task of forming a new coalition government. Well, closer to home now, Nigel Farage has hit out at Sir Keir Starmer, saying Labour is getting desperate after the PM accused the Reform leader of perpetuating what he's called dangerous right-wing politics. In a major speech at the Labour conference in Glasgow, the PM condemned Reform's dangerous policies and criticised Nigel Farage and his party's employment rights and potential NHS charges.
A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland, that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain.
A British couple in their 70s have been arrested by the Taliban in Afghanistan. 79-year-old Peter Reynolds and his wife Barbie, who's 75, were returning to their home in the east of the country on the 1st of February when they were detained. The couple have been running training projects in Afghanistan for women and children for the past 18 years. It's currently not known exactly why the couple have been arrested. Conclave has emerged as the film to beat at the next week's Academy Awards after sweeping the Screen Actors Guild Awards overnight, winning Best Film and Best Ensemble. Other winners included Demi Moore, Timothée Chalamet and Kieran Culkin, who are now heading into the next week's Oscars with a boost of momentum. And finally, the Flying Scotsman has made her first passenger journey of the year as it hauled carriages on the Nene Valley Railway in Cambridgeshire as part of a celebration of 200 years of British railways. Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour. Now, it's back to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 8 minutes past 2. Now, the former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been sentenced to 10 weeks in prison after admitting to punching a constituent.
Yes, the Runcorn and Helsby MP, well, he'll serve only 40% of his sentence before being released on licence.
And in the last hour, the Labour Party has issued a statement saying that Mike Amesbury's constituents deserve better, and we look forward to them getting the representation they deserve in the future with a new Labour MP.
Well, they right to be so confident. Let's cross back to Downing Street and speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, for more details. Christopher, for how long has this been a Labour seat, and are Labour right to be confident with their statement that another Labour MP will win that seat?
Well, that's quite bullish from Labour, isn't it, Emily and Tom? Now, it's been a Labour seat since the last election. It didn't exist before July 2024. Before that, it was Weaver Vale, and that seat had been held by Mike Amesbury since 2017. Before that, I think it was a Conservative seat. So Labour are quite punchy here, if you excuse that awful term, sorry. They're confident of the seat. They're saying here in this statement here that they believe the Labour Party took swift action following Mike Amesbury's completely unacceptable actions, and he's no longer a Labour MP or a member of the Labour Party. It's right that he pleaded guilty and has now been sentenced. And they say this: local residents in the Runcorn and Helsby constituency deserve better, and we look forward to them getting the representation they deserve in the future with a new Labour MP. And that's because if he does not appeal this, there will be a recall referendum about whether there should be a recall by-election. If 10% of local people vote for a by-election, it will then take place. And that's why I think everyone's sniffing around this, not least Reform UK. The party's chairman, Zia Youssef, he has said this, that the great people of Runcorn deserve far better than waiting 6 weeks for a recall petition to take place. That's how long it takes to establish a recall petition. we call on Mike Amesbury to do the honourable thing and resign immediately so a by-election can be held. So either way, it looks like Labour and Reform UK are pushing towards a by-election. The Tories are quiet. The Tories are in third place. Already it looks like a Reform-Labour face-off this year.
Interesting dynamics there. Of course, the Reform Party came in second, but they were fewer than 1,000 votes ahead of the Conservatives, who were a close third. I suppose the real question is, will the Reform Party be able to deliver a squeeze on those Conservative voters? Will the Reform Party be able to shake off some of the toxicity of previous parties that were led by Nigel Farage and actually try and deliver this? Because there is clearly discontent with the government. Will it be able to channel through the Reform Party? This will be a huge, huge early test.
And a test for Kemi Badenoch too. Does she stand not a paper candidate, but a proper candidate to try and take on and show voters that Reform UK, its puffed up poll ratings are just that, and you can puncture those. So it's a test for her in her early months as Tory leader, a test for Zia Youssef, Nigel Farage about the idea of momentum behind Reform UK, and a test for the Labour Party. Can they hang on to a seat that they won back in July last year? They haven't got an MP there now. Mike Amesbury is an independent MP, of course. Can they hang on to it? All the three ways, a big test, I think, for these three big parties.
And yet, this by-election may still not happen. If Mike Amesbury chooses to appeal this sentencing and it gets reduced to a non-custodial sentence, we may well have a situation where we have Mike Amesbury sitting as an independent MP for another 4 years in this Parliament.
That is definitely very possible. Now, as things stand, we're waiting to hear from Mike Amesbury after the sentencing. We haven't been told he's appealing. If he does appeal and it's reduced to a non-custodial sentence, then he will then be, he won't be required to go towards a recall petition. So it's all in his hands, really, and how he feels about it. But the three main parties, as you might expect, they sent blood here. They think they can get one of their own MPs into the seat. And, you know, it should be held by a Labour government with a 15,000 majority. But given the fickle nature of the polls at the moment, and all by-elections become national polls very quickly, it could be quite exciting later this year if we go that far, if Amesbury doesn't appeal or loses an appeal to his sentence.
Fascinating. Thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope. There outside Downing Street for us. I don't suppose he'd win an appeal on this.
Well, this is one of the big questions, because, of course, we've been asking, is this a lenient sentence, but is this a sentence that is sort of buttressed up against the possibility of appeal? That's a big question. Why don't we pose it to the public law barrister, Francis Hoare. Francis, can you just talk us through how this sentencing might have been arrived at? Because there are all sorts of different considerations to take into account.
Yes, it's a common assault, but the aggravating features of it were that he punched this man to the head and then particularly carried on punching him when he fell to the floor. The magistrate's right to say that there have been cases where one punch can result in somebody's death, although that's very unlikely and unusual. And looking at that footage doesn't look like the kind of.
But Francis, just on that point, because a lot of people are getting in touch about that, saying, you know, all of the discussion about one punch in Parliament, I think it was led by Deanna Davis, a former Conservative MP, Davison, all of that talk, and yet just 10 weeks for this. I mean, it could have been a one punch, you never know.
Well, it was more than that, as I think we can see, and the magistrate said that. And he took that into account in fixing the sentence. The sentence is subject to pretty strict, well, not strict, but sentencing guidelines which have categories of harm and categories of culpability, and the categories of culpability include prolonged and persistent assault, and the categories of harm relate to the harm, the physical and psychological harm on the victim. It's not entirely clear from the report that I've read what that is, but category 2, for example, is minor physical or psychological harm. Category 1, the most serious, more than minor physical or psychological harm. There's a higher offence, a more serious offence called assault causing actual bodily harm, where there is more than merely trifling harm to the victim. So one must assume that that didn't happen, given that he wasn't charged with that offence. And then the maximum sentence for this is 6 months, but generally speaking, up to 26 weeks in custody for harm one and the most serious culpability. So this would seem, but starting points very often on these sort of common assaults are serious community sentence. So it would be within the bounds of possibility that he might have got a non-custodial sentence, including potentially a suspended sentence. The important thing to remember, though, if he got a suspended sentence, is that would automatically lead to a recall, whereas if he got if he was sentenced to community service without a suspended sentence, he would not, subject to Parliament suspending him.
And this is clearly the biggest point of it all, Francis, because this is what will inform whether or not he's likely to appeal this ruling. I wonder, has the judge sort of taken this into account? Clearly, no one would want their judgment to be appealed. Does this look watertight to you, or is there a chance that Mr Amesbury will actually successfully appeal and avoid that by-election after all?
Well, I heard your reporter saying we don't know whether he's appealing, but he did actually ask, his counsel did actually ask for bail pending appeal. So although he wouldn't have filed an application for permission to appeal, well, filed an appeal because he doesn't need permission, he's indicated that he might, and he can ask for bail to a circuit judge in the Crown Court if he wishes. He may or may not get to that application heard today. It is possible, perhaps unlikely. And if he appeals, it would be what's called a de novo hearing, a new hearing on sentencing from scratch. So essentially a Crown Court judge and two lay magistrates on this occasion, will sit and decide the appropriate sentence they will not be aware of the sentence of the lower courts, but they will decide it for themselves afresh. So it's not like a review of a sentence and deciding whether it's unduly lenient, which would happen in the Court of Appeal. That's not what would happen. It would go to the Crown Court.
So it looks likely that there will be this appeal unless he gets cold feet?
I mean, given that he's otherwise got to spend 5 weeks in custody, because that's half the sentence he was given, I would have thought it's pretty likely that he'll appeal. But
interesting. Francis Hoare, thank you very much indeed. You're a public law barrister.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. I wasn't suggesting, by the way, that this was a one-punch assault. Obviously, you can see with the video, we've all seen the video, that there were multiple punches. But anyway, in other news, the migration backlash in Europe. Yes, a tidal wave in Germany. Voters have turfed out the governing left-wing coalition. Chancellor Olaf Scholz, a close ally of Keir Starmer, well, his party's collapsed from first to third.
So let's speak to someone who knows a bit more about this, looking at the situation on the ground, of course. The assistant online editor at The Spectator, Lisa Hazelden, has been looking closely at the outcome of this election. Lisa, what does this mean?
So the AfD, as you mentioned just now, has come second in these elections. About 1 in 5 Germans, more or less, has voted for them. And I think particularly between them and the votes that the CDU party, the Conservative equivalent party, I suppose, who have come in first place, we're really seeing a turn to the right in Germany. The vast majority of this campaign over the past 2 and also months has been fought on the issue of migration, particularly in relation to sort of law and order, illegal migration, particularly in the wake of several attacks that have taken place over the course of the election campaign. So I think really the German people have spoken and said, we want a crackdown on migration, particularly illegal migration. We want our country to be safer, and we are fed up with the government that had come before, and we want change.
But are they going to get what they want, Lisa? Because the alternative for Germany is being frozen out. They're not going to be in a coalition, are they? So it could be that there are only minor tweaks to migration policy.
Yeah, that's right. So the AfD are being kept behind what the Germans call the firewall. It's basically a sort of a pact between all the other parties to refuse to collaborate with the AfD on any sort of policy or in government in a sort of a coalition. So, yeah, the AfD, despite being the second biggest party in the new parliament, won't actually form part of any government that Friedrich Merz, the politician who leads the CDU party, will manage to form. Merz has also given several pledges along similar lines, sort of pledging to basically shut the borders to anybody without the proper documentation to enter the country on pretty much day one of his chancellorship, and to sort of crack down on migration policy in other ways. So there is a chance that we will see it. But yeah, as you say, there's no guarantee that those will be particularly significant changes, especially if whoever he decides to strike a coalition with force him to water those down.
And Lisa, just lastly, when might we see a new government in Germany? We know that these negotiations between multiple parties, well, it can take months.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it will take a while. I think essentially the new parliament has to meet within 30 days of the election taking place. So I think that takes us to pretty much the end of March. But for Friedrich Merz to be sort of sworn in as Chancellor, there's a sort of a separate vote that takes place. So really, I don't think we can expect to see the new government sort of up and running and functioning much before Easter, really. I might be wrong. They might get everything hashed out pretty quick, but that's the time frame that we're working with.
OK, Lisa Heseldine, thank you very much indeed. You're an assistant online editor at The Spectator. Very interesting what's going on there. I mean, our poll of the day today is whether this result shows that there's a wider backlash against mass migration on the continent, and it would seem as though.
No, it certainly would. But in other news, we're giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway. We've got 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here are the details.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. Yes, a trusted royal advisor has broken his silence, accusing Meghan Markle of bullying junior members of staff. This will have a ripple effect through the royal family. We're speaking to our correspondent next.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, a new poll commissioned by Channel 4 shows that more than half of Gen Z believe that Britain should be ruled by a dictator. Seriously, they actually said that. Well, 1 in 3 would want an army. What's the army in charge? 1 in 3 want martial law.
There's something on the idea of some form of strong leadership. They have looked at British politics. They have looked at the politics in which they grow up in, and they see failures at the democratic level. They see a weak, a soft, a centre that doesn't do anything, makes promises and fails to deliver them. They see nothing actually happening. And they also see a future where they have no democratic engagement, because they're never going to have a house. They're never going to have a family. Why would they? Why would they be able to? So the idea of having somebody strong to come through and blow away the cobwebs of our current system, I can see that being attractive. When I grew up, I was talking to not that old men, and and women who had been through the war, who knew what dictatorship was. Up until the 70s, we were in the Cold War. People knew what dictatorship was. They knew people being locked up, being sent to Siberia. They knew what this meant. And I don't think anybody under the age of 34 actually has a clue. It's all the other side of the world. It's in North Korea, it's in China. It's not here, and it's not part of their lived experience. And that's a big change.
And I wonder, actually, Nigel, if a lot of these people think, I don't know, like Donald Trump's a dictator. He got elected with a huge mandate. Do they understand what dictators is? Or, actually, are young people just so listless? They're so feeble-minded, they need to be told what to do and how to live.
I certainly think that Gwen's right about there's a disillusionment with democracy and the results of it. The idea that a dictatorship is the answer to it, or having the military rule over us, is obvious nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:26. Now, one of the Prince and Princess of Wales' most trusted advisors has broken his silence after accusing Meghan Markle of bullying junior members of staff.
Yes, Jason Knauf. Is that how you pronounce it?
Knauf.
Knauf? No. That's Knauf. Hey, well, he spoke to the Australian network 9 Now. Let's take a listen.
And was keeping a close eye on the couple's public image. Behind the scenes, a storm was brewing. Just a few months after he joined them on this trip to Ireland in 2018, their first as husband and wife, Jason raised concerns the Duchess was upsetting junior staff.
I am very concerned that the Duchess was able to bully 2 PAs out of the household in the past year. We have had report after report from people who have witnessed unacceptable behavior.
Right, well, there you go. Shall we speak to GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who's with us here. Cameron, how significant is this intervention, then?
Well, incredibly. Jason is a very trusted aide of Prince William, but also used to be Harry and Meghan's trusted aide as well. And I suspect he would not have spoken on camera to the media unless he had Prince William's express permission to do so. He was asked on several topics. The whole point of the documentary on 60 Minutes Australia was looking ahead to the kind of king that Prince William would be. But inevitably, Jason was asked about Harry and Meghan because he was at the centre of the storm when it was, on the surface, the so-called Fab Four, William, Catherine, Harry, Meghan. But, of course, below, we know all of these problems were going on, including these very serious bullying allegations against Meghan Markle, allegedly bullying 2 junior members of staff out of the royal household, something both Meghan and her lawyers have always denied. But, of course, we have this letter, which was aired in open court when Meghan was suing the Mail on Sunday for a separate issue, that said, from Jason to Prince William's private secretary, I'm concerned that Meghan managed to bully 2 members of staff out of the royal household. So it was there in black and white. He essentially told the journalists in Australia that it's very sad that Harry and William's relationship has got to the stage that it's in. I understand that they're not on speaking terms and haven't been for a number of years. Every time you mention the Duke of Sussex to Prince William's team, the barriers go up. They don't want to, talk about it. But he does say that Prince William has chosen to keep a dignified silence, and therefore I'm going to as well, which again suggests that Jason Knauf even has only spoken because Prince William's given him permission to do so. But he also talks about the most dreadful year that Prince William's had with the cancer diagnoses of his nearest and dearest.
But of course, people will be so interested in what actually went on behind the scenes in those years when, first, I mean, was the wool pulled over the public's eyes about how these 4 individuals were getting on? I mean, do we know at what point things started to break down and get to the point where it simply couldn't be repaired?
Well, it appears to be the run-up to the wedding in 2018. If you remember our very own colleague Camilla Tominey, she broke, when she was working for the Sunday Express, the story that Meghan allegedly made Kate Middleton cry over the bridesmaids' dress fittings, if you remember that one, something that Meghan has denied again and said it was actually the other way around. We're still not quite none the wiser, but it was those little things. I suspect it was more of a culture clash. Meghan coming from a Hollywood background, an American background, compared to the quite stuffy, quite stiff upper lip, not saying quite what you mean, palace culture, and I think that probably came to head. So I think
if
that's
only
part
there
of
was
it.
a bit of warning, perhaps an American who'd come into the royal family before, maybe around 100 years ago. Perhaps, if only there had been some foresight.
This is the thing, Cameron. Meghan is trying desperately to launch this new company. She's having all of these difficulties with trademarks. The first name wasn't right. Now this name isn't right for another reason. I mean, we're not exactly sure what's happening there, whether she's going to be selling jams or whether it's more about, I don't know, lifestyle in other ways. I don't know. But all of this negative news about her continues and their popularity seems to still be on the floor.
It just doesn't help, does it? And I think whatever Meghan seems to do, she appears to not win, to be honest. I don't know if that is because of opinion polls or she's got the wrong kind of team around her. We simply don't know. I think Meghan is trying to come back to her roots. Before she met Prince Harry, she had a relatively successful lifestyle blog online called The Tig. I think she's trying to reinvent that now that she has this global platform given to her by marrying into the royal family and notably Prince Harry. And now, of course, she doesn't have the financial constraints of being a working member of the royal family, so she can do her thing. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, Jason was saying it's been obviously a brutal year for Prince William, and also was saying that it's when he had the phone call where talking about the Princess of Wales's cancer diagnosis with him, Jason said it was the lowest he has ever seen Prince William or heard Prince William, which I think speaks volumes.
Wow. Yeah, Meghan Markle's Instagram is currently lovely pictures of a very sunny California and her walking around the garden, which is rather nice. A dog.
But notice the jumper that she's wearing. It looks very similar to the one worn by Princess Diana when she was coming out of the gym.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? Yes, we'll have to show you these pics later.
Yeah.
Well, it gets deeper and deeper, doesn't it? Crikey, Cameron Walker on that bombshell. Thanks indeed for joining us and talking through all things
It's all about
royal.
slow living, embracing your feminine energy for Meghan Markle now, I think.
So I could not do slow living. I'll get very irritated by people who walk slowly.
It's only fast-paced here.
No, absolutely. And with that fast pace, we're going to take you straight to the news headlines, but we're going to be joined by the chair of the WASPy Women Campaigners. After those headlines, they're taking legal action against the government. Stay with us.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's just after 2:30. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. Former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been jailed for 10 weeks after he admitted punching a man to the ground in his Cheshire constituency in last October. Amesbury, who represents Runcorn and Helsby, pleaded guilty to assaulting 45-year-old Paul Fellows after video footage emerged online showing the confrontation. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To mark the grim milestone, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently hosting leaders at the Support Ukraine Summit in Kyiv. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer spoke at the event on virtual link from Downing Street, saying the UK is with you today and every day.
Their voices echo in my ears. They inform decisions that I take and the peace that I believe that we must see. So I have a very simple, clear message today. The UK is with you today and every day. From His Majesty the King to the NHS workers volunteering in hospitals in Ukraine. To the community.
And finally, the Vatican says Pope Francis remains in hospital where he's experienced mild kidney problems but continues to be alert and well-oriented. Pope Francis has asked for prayers as he continues to receive treatment in hospital for double pneumonia. The Vatican also says the 88-year-old spent a tranquil night in hospital in Rome. Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines for now. Tatiana Sanchez will have your next update in half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Kilwinning and Ayr because of electrical supply problems. On Merseyside, Hornby Road is closed each way between Southport Road at Bootle and the A59 Rice Lane junction at Liverpool for an investigation. In Lincolnshire, the A52 is closed in both directions along Trusthorpe Road at Sutton-on-Sea because of a burst water main. The M42 in Warwickshire is partly blocked southbound by an accident just after junction 7 for the M6. In Norfolk, there are delays on the A140 at Swainsthorpe because of emergency repairs. In Monmouthshire, the A4042 is closed south of the A40 at Abergavenny because of flooding, and in East Sussex, the A259 is closed each way along Grand Junction Road off the A23 at the Palace Pier roundabout in Brighton because of an unsafe building causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 2:37 in the afternoon and campaigners are threatening the government with legal action unless the government reconsiders the decision to reject compensation for millions of women affected by the state pension age increase.
Well, the Women Against State Pension Inequality group, a curious name in my view, has sent a letter to the Department for Work and Pensions warning of court proceedings if the issue is not resolved.
OK, well, a watchdog recommended that compensation should be paid to women born in the 1950s whose state pension age was raised to be equal with men. But Sir Keir Starmer says taxpayers cannot afford to foot the, well, it could be £10.5 billion.
Well, let's speak now to the chair of Women Against State Pension Inequality, Angela Madden. Thanks so much for joining us, Angela. First of all, why is your campaign group called Women Against State Pension Inequality? Because you're campaigning against the equalisation of state pension ages. Surely your campaign is against state pension equality.
No, we're not actually complaining about the inequality of the state pension age changes. We believe that was a change that needed to be made. But those who make that change have a responsibility to inform people who were previously told that their state pension age was 60, that it was actually changing. So we are campaigning against the way it was done. not the act in itself.
Of course, what the government might say is that this was legislated for, I think, back in 1994. I mean, that's before I was born. And there was, of course, quite a lot of media coverage about this.
Yes, you don't know what that was.
Anyone could look this up. There were letters that were sent, there were speeches that were made. I mean, you have to quite studiously have avoided the news media in the UK, or indeed any sort of financial advisor, to not know that retirement age was changing 25 years before it did.
Actually, I think you're not quite right there. I actually worked for a government-owned company, and I was in their occupational pension scheme. I started working there in 1996, so just 1 year after the pension age was changed. And for every year, right up until I left that company in 2004, I had a pension statement which told me my state pension age was 60. Also,
that sounds like you've got a complaint. That sounds like you've got a complaint with your company rather than with the government. Surely that's your company's fault.
The company was owned by the government. So whose responsibility was it to tell the company pension schemes at that time?
I mean, that sounds like a really bad company pension scheme that didn't check the law. I mean, that sounds like you've got a very legitimate grievance, but not with the people who changed the state pension age. You've got a legitimate grievance with the pensions department in the company you worked for.
But also, at that time, right up until 2016, the Department of Work and Pensions' own website advertised on its landing page that the state pension age for women was 60 and the state pension age for men was 65. So there were a lot of official sources of information telling us that our state pension age had not changed. And yes, there probably were some newspaper articles. Apparently there was one in the Times at the time that said the state pension age was changing in 2020. Had I seen that, and I must say I didn't, I would have thought, phew, thank goodness, I've missed that. My state pension age is in 2014. Yeah. So there was lots of misinformation. But the Ombudsman has looked into that in his 6-year investigation and agrees with what we've always said, which was that the Department of Work and Pensions maladministered the change.
Now, Angela, Tom could argue about this all day, and he thinks he's absolutely right on this. He thinks the WASPy women have absolutely no case, that they do not deserve any of this money and they never will, and they all should have known, and anyone who didn't know was, let's say, I don't want to say idiot, but not aware enough of their own surroundings.
But the Ombudsman basically agrees with my case, because it was only found on a very particular element of a letter being sent.
Hang on. Angela, though, I want to know also about this legal action that you're considering taking. What exactly is that, and how is it going to unfold?
Well, the Ombudsman is responsible for the inquiry into our legitimate complaints. And of course, the Secretary of State can disagree with him, but she can't disregard his conclusions. So the Department of Work and Pensions has come up with a different set of statistics from the Ombudsman, and they are saying that they haven't said they can't afford the rise, the compensation. They've said that it's not a good use of taxpayers' money, given that we all knew about it anyway. And if we had received a letter, we wouldn't open it, so it wouldn't make any difference to our knowledge.
But, Angela, this is about the... I mean, let's be clear about what the Ombudsman found, because it wasn't about the broad case that the WASPy campaign has campaigned on for years and years and years. It was on a very, very narrow, specific technical issue, a 2-year delay to a letter being sent. That's what the Ombudsman decided compensation should be given out for.
Yes, it was a minimum of 2 years delay to those first sent. But yes, it's
But that's separate from the original case you made.
In that 2 to 7 years that people could have had that information earlier, we would have had the opportunity to make different decisions. Now, coming up to your retirement age, and you will get there one day, and it will be quicker than you think.
Yeah, I'm convinced I'm not getting a state pension, by the way. I think the finances of the country are so kaput that that's just completely out of the window.
I feel like your anger about this comes from a resentment.
No. Let's hear the case.
But one makes decisions about our own retirement. And plenty of people, myself included, had made a decision to give up full-time working to take on caring responsibilities. Now, had I had that letter, in my case, it would have been about 3 or 4 years earlier, I think, I would not have made that decision at that time because I made decision on the information I had.
Yeah, and then it's very difficult to get back into work. And a lot of women in their middle age and in their later years do take on those care responsibilities that men simply do not. Yes, there are men who do, but mostly it falls on women, and I think most women know that. Angela Madden, thank you very much indeed. Chair of Women Against State Pension Inequality. You both put your case forward.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the Ombudsman found against the vast majority of the WASPy women's case, found in favour of this one narrow technical idea that a letter that was sent to households was sent on a delay.
Fine, but you could have a little more empathy.
How much more
a little more empathy.
could the government have done?
A little more empathy, rather than essentially saying you're a dum-dum if you didn't know. It's not like today, right, where you get a ping on your phone and everyone, whenever anything happens, and where literally if you miss something...
Well, all the more reason to check your financial planning then.
You don't expect necessarily that it's going to change, right? Or if your employer, in the case of Angela there, has told you that it isn't, and then actually the government then, you find out a few years later that it's been completely...
Well, it sounds
your whole
like
plans for life have completely changed overnight.
It sounds like Angela should sue her employer, not the government, because the government changed the law.
Well, we don't know what the company was.
It's for the companies to follow the law.
Agency,
the government changed it announced it was changing the law in 1994. It changed the law in 1995. I mean, that was 30 years ago. I mean, how much more time does the government need to give for something to filter through the system in order that people understand? They sent out letters, they did media on this, it was in the news. I mean, we can cite again and again and again.
Do you think that people are lying when they say that they didn't know?
No, I think they're financially self-interested.
Do you think they're lying?
I think people can have all sorts of varying recollections of
Varying
events.
Recollections, OK. OK. Well, GBNews.com/your say if you're in search of some winter sun. Here's the forecast for some top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, welcome to your winter sun forecast. Sunshine and showers for many with snow over the Alps and feeling less cold in Greece. Plenty of sunshine across the Canary Islands, feeling pleasant here, highs of 19 degrees. There'll be sunshine and showers elsewhere, falling as snow over the Alps, and across Greece, temperatures are going to be rising with temperatures up to 13 or 14 degrees. Looking ahead then, plenty of sunny spells, a few showers still around and feeling pleasant in that sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Well, we've got lots more coming up. Now, this is an interesting one, bizarre.
What's the most exotic meat you've ever eaten?
I think I've eaten, actually, I'll tell a story after the break.
OK, well, we'll stay tuned for that, because banned bush meat smuggled into the UK is being sold for home delivery. Well, what's all this about? Stay with us to find out.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After quite a wet start across parts of the south and southeast, rain eventually clearing, leaving a day of sunshine and showers, but still very blustery across parts of the northwest. A risk of gales here, where we see most of the isobars on the chart. Rain eventually clearing the far southeast, leading to a day of sunny spells and showers, but some of these showers quite heavy at times, merging together to bring longer spells of rain. May even see some hail and thunder mixed in there too, and very blustery showers across the far northwest. A risk of coastal gales here, but for many, a finer day compared to Sunday. Plenty of dry weather and plenty of sunshine too, and temperatures still widely above average, highs of 13 to 14 Celsius across the far southeast. Then to end the day across Scotland, still plenty of very blustery showers, particularly in western parts, perhaps a little bit drier across the far east, but even here can't rule out still a few showers moving their way through, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of England, still some very heavy showers moving through here, similar across Wales and parts of the southwest, but central and southeastern parts may see a slightly drier end to the day with light winds. Then through the course of the night, we'll continue to see these showers slowly skirting their way eastwards across the country. Blustery still to start across northwestern parts of Scotland, but those winds eventually easing away by morning. And we may even see some longer spells of rain across southern counties at times too. But once again, plenty of dry weather overnight. and most towns and cities just remaining above freezing. Then as we head into Tuesday, once again a fairly similar day, a drier start across parts of the southeast, even seeing some sunshine later, but we still can't rule out plenty of showers moving their way in, particularly across the far northwest, and then eventually seeing a few more bubble up elsewhere through the course of the afternoon. But much lighter winds than of late. Once again, still plenty of dry weather around and temperatures still above average for the time of year. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, well, banned bushmeat smuggled into the UK is being sold for home delivery via social media.
Well, this is all in the Daily Mail today. Profiles, platforms are selling illegal meat, including monkey, porcupine and lizard, offering delivery to the doorstep.
Well, that sounds rather worrying. Director of External Affairs at the Countryside Alliance, Mo Metcalfe-Fisher, joins us now. Mo, apparently this could give us Ebola.
There's a whole raft of horrible, nasty diseases that can come with bushmeat, which is why that the Food Standards Agency have been very clear: don't eat it, don't buy it, don't go anywhere near it. It's, as I say, it's being advertised very freely on social media. The Countryside Alliance investigation, which led to this story, has found dozens of platforms across TikTok, Instagram. There's no real social media account that's exempt that is advertising it. And they're boasting, these sellers. They're boasting, saying it's so easy to get this produce into the UK. Their videos are even showing them loading the produce, which, as you said, includes porcupines, lizards, alligators, monkeys, all sorts, easily into the UK, and then people showing it arriving. Now, you know, how much of it's true, we don't know. There's a suspicion that it could be some of it could be scamming. But we have to treat this seriously. The diseases that can come from this present a major biosecurity threat to farmers. It's the last thing that they need for something like Ebola or foot and mouth to come out and basically decimate the countryside as a result of this. So we want to see those social media companies clamp down on that. The government need to be the ones urging them. Now, following this story, TikTok have removed a number of those accounts that are advertising it. They could come back. Who knows? They probably might try. But that's one story, and we're only scratching the surface on this. I am very worried that this is going to be a much larger problem.
What I'm struggling to understand is who on earth wants to eat bush meat? Rats from the sort of bushes of West Africa. I mean, it doesn't sound particularly appetising.
Well, it's being marketed as a taste of home. And the businesses that we found are largely based in Lagos and around Nigeria, but bushmeat is from the whole of the west of Africa, Central Africa, but there are also the Americas as well that are doing similar things. The mass sort of illegal distribution of meat that you read about at Dover, for example, we're talking lorry loads there. So it's slightly more easier to spot these, But this is coming through with the raw mail. Wow. So our postmen are, unbeknownst to them, handling this really potentially nasty, dangerous stuff.
It's just incredible.
And it's a serious security
You learn
threat.
something new every day. I hadn't thought about bushmeat being, sent in a Royal Mail delivery to your house.
No.
But alas, that is happening in this country. Brilliant.
Nicer food does exist. Well, Mo Metcalfe-Fisher, thanks so much for talking us through a bizarre story uncovered, of course, by the Countryside Alliance.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a bit of a campaign on this going viral. You'll be pushing for that. I'm sure you will, Mo Metcalfe-Fisher. That's it from us.
It is indeed, but don't go anywhere. Of course, much more to come on GB News this afternoon. It's Martin Daubney next.
heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through this evening and into tomorrow, still plenty of scattered heavy showers, maybe even some hail and thunder possible, and still rather windy across the far northwest, where we see most of the isobars on the chart, though overnight we'll eventually see these winds easing away, leaving to a largely dry night across eastern areas, but still plenty of blustery showers moving their way into the west. Still, once again, they could be heavy overnight, but it should be largely dry across the very far southeast, and where we start to see winds ease away across the north, perhaps even some patchy frost by the time we reach the morning. Most towns and cities, however, remaining largely above freezing, lows of around 3 to 4 Celsius. Then to start the day across Scotland on Tuesday, once again quite a wet start across parts of the west. Plenty of blustery showers once again moving their way through here. Perhaps a little bit dry across parts of the east. Aberdeenshire, for example, could see a brighter start to the morning. Northern Ireland